Vanessa Whitmore's hands trembled as she stared at the leaked video, lighting up every screen in Chicago. Her own voice echoed back at her. "Beat me at chess and I'll marry you." The camera captured her arrogant laugh, the dismissive wave toward the janitor across the board, the absolute certainty she'd win. 20 minutes later, checkmate. The humiliation burned fresh even now, weeks after it happened. But worse than the scandal, worse than the board threatening to strip her CEO title, was the look on Mason Reed's face when she accused him of using her. She'd destroyed the only real thing she'd ever had. Before we dive into this story, I want to invite you to stick around until the very end. If you enjoy it, please hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now, let's begin. The conference room on the 43rd floor of Whitmore Industries sat empty, except for Vanessa. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the Chicago skyline, the city lights blurring into gold smears against the November rain. It was nearly midnight on a Thursday, and she'd sent her assistant home 3 hours ago. The marble chess set her father had given her sat on the long table, half the pieces scattered across the board in a game she'd been playing against herself for the past hour. She wasn't winning. Vanessa leaned back in the leather chair and rubbed her temples. 35 years old, billionaire CEO, profiled in Forbes twice, and here she was spending another night alone in an office that cost more to decorate than most people earned in a decade. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd built an empire on the bones of her father's failing company, turned a regional embarrassment into a global powerhouse, and somehow ended up more isolated than she'd been at 22 when she'd inherited the mess. The door opened behind her. She didn't turn. "I told everyone to go home," she said, moving her queen into what was probably another trap she'd set for herself without realizing it. "Sorry, ma'am, just finishing up." The voice was quiet, respectful. She glanced over her shoulder and saw the night janitor. She'd seen him around but never really looked at him. Tall, maybe 30-something, wearing the gray uniform with the Whitmore Industries patch on the chest. Dark hair, tired eyes, pushing a cleaning cart toward the windows. Vanessa turned back to her game. "Take your time." The silence stretched out between them, broken only by the soft sound of him wiping down the glass. She studied the board, trying to figure out how she'd managed to put herself in such a terrible position. Her father had taught her chess when she was 6, said it would prepare her for business. Think 3 moves ahead, anticipate your opponent, control the center. She'd internalized those lessons so thoroughly they'd become her entire personality. "You're going to lose in 5 moves." She froze. The janitor had stopped cleaning and was standing a few feet away, looking at the board with mild interest. Vanessa felt her jaw tighten. "Excuse me?" "Your queen," he nodded toward the piece. "She's protecting too many things at once. If you move her there," he pointed without touching anything, "you'll lose your knight. If you move her anywhere else, checkmate in 5. For a moment, Vanessa just stared at him. Nobody corrected her. Not her executives, not her board members, certainly not the janitor. But when she looked back at the board, she saw he was right. The position was hopeless. "Who are you?" she asked. "Mason Reed, ma'am. I work nights." "I can see that. I mean, where did you learn to play?" He hesitated, like he was deciding how much to say. "I used to play competitively, long time ago." Something about his tone suggested long time ago had been painful. Vanessa's curiosity, always her greatest strength and worst weakness, flared up immediately. She gestured at the empty chair across from her. "Sit down." "Ma'am, I really should—" "Consider it an order from the CEO." She started resetting the pieces. "Unless you're scared." That got a reaction. Not much, just a slight twitch at the corner of his mouth. But enough. Mason glanced at the door, then at his cleaning cart, then at her. Finally, he pulled out the chair and sat down. Up close, Vanessa could see the lines around his eyes, the exhaustion carved into his face. This was a man who worked nights because he had to, not because he wanted to. "White or black?" she asked. "You choose." She took white. First move advantage. She played her standard opening, the one that had crushed every opponent at her country club, the one that made executives sweat during the friendly games she used to assess their strategic thinking. Mason responded immediately, no hesitation. Vanessa played faster, trying to pressure him. He kept pace without effort. Within 10 moves, she realized she was in serious trouble. Within 15, she knew she was going to lose. Within 20, her king was cornered, and she had nowhere left to run. Checkmate, Mason said quietly. Vanessa stared at the board in disbelief. Again. They played again. He beat her in 18 moves. They played a third time, 22 moves. The fourth game lasted longer only because he seemed to be letting her try different strategies, patiently dismantling each one like a teacher with a particularly stubborn student. By the fifth game, Vanessa was leaning forward, elbows on the table, completely focused. The office, the company, the spreadsheets waiting on her laptop, all of it had vanished. There was only the board, the pieces, and the quiet man across from her who was destroying her without a hint of gloating. When he checkmated her for the fifth time, she laughed. Actually laughed, something she couldn't remember doing in months. Okay, she said, sitting back. You're good, really good. Where did you play competitively? Mason's expression shuddered. Doesn't matter. That was a different life. Try me. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, I was ranked in the top 100 worldwide when I was 25. Got as high as 57th. They called me... He stopped himself. It doesn't matter what they called me. I left the circuit 7 years ago. Vanessa felt her eyebrows rise. Top 100 worldwide meant he'd been among the best players on the planet. Why would you walk away from that? Because chess doesn't pay hospital bills. His voice was flat, matter of fact. And my daughter needed a father who was present, not flying to tournaments in 6 different countries every month. The words hit Vanessa harder than she expected. She'd spent her entire adult life chasing the next deal, the next acquisition, the next victory. The idea of voluntarily stepping away from something you were brilliant at, something that defined you, because someone else needed you more, it was completely foreign to her. How old is your daughter? 7. Lily. His face softened when he said the name. She has severe asthma. Some days are better than others. Most days I'm just trying to keep her breathing steady and make sure she's happy. Vanessa didn't know what to say to that. She'd never thought about having children, never thought about much beyond the company, if she was being honest. Her longest relationship had lasted 9 months and ended when she'd forgotten their anniversary because of merger negotiations. So you work nights, she said slowly, because I can be home when she gets back from school. My mom watches her while I sleep, and when I'm here, it's not perfect, but it works. Mason started resetting the pieces, his movements careful and precise. Anyway, I should get back to work. Thanks for the games. Wait. Vanessa wasn't sure why she said it. Maybe because this was the first interesting conversation she'd had in months. Maybe because losing 5 times in a row had been strangely exhilarating. Maybe because she was just tired of being alone. Yeah? She grinned, feeling reckless. Let's make this interesting. 1 more game. If you win, I'll marry you. Mason blinked at her. I'm sorry, what? You heard me. Beat me 1 more time and I'll marry you. Consider it a CEO's promise. For the first time that night, he smiled. It was a small smile, slightly crooked, and it transformed his whole face. That's quite an offer, Ms. Whitmore. So? You scared now? No, ma'am. Just calculating whether I want to marry my boss. Ex-boss, Vanessa corrected. If you win, you definitely won't be cleaning offices anymore. They both knew she was joking. At least Vanessa thought they both knew. This was just banter, just 2 people being ridiculous at midnight in an empty office. Nothing serious, nothing that would come back to haunt her. Mason sat back down. All right, you're on. This game was different. Vanessa played with everything she had, calling on every strategy her father had taught her, every trick she'd learned in 3 decades of chess. For the first time that night, Mason had to think before moving. His responses came slower. The position stayed balanced for nearly 30 moves, the longest they'd played. But in the end, he found the weakness in her defense. The checkmate, when it came, was elegant and ruthless. I'll be expecting that proposal in writing, Mason said, standing up. His tone was light, playful. Should I check with HR about the paperwork? Vanessa laughed again. Get back to work, Reed. He nodded, grabbed his cleaning cart, and headed for the door. Before he left, he turned back. For what it's worth, you're better than you think. You just play scared, like you're afraid of what happens if you actually commit to an attack. Then he was gone, and Vanessa was alone again with the board and the city lights and the realization that for the first time in years, she'd felt genuinely alive. She didn't know someone had been filming through the glass door. Dimpang. The video appeared on the company's internal message board 3 days later. By lunchtime, it had spread to Twitter. By evening, every major business news outlet had picked it up. The headline variations were endless, but the message was the same. Billionaire CEO promises to marry janitor after losing chess match. Vanessa first saw it in a Monday morning board meeting. Her CFO, Richard Chen, cleared his throat awkwardly and turned his laptop toward her. Vanessa, we have a situation. She watched herself on the screen, laughing, saying those stupid words. If you win, I'll marry you. The camera angle captured everything, her casual arrogance, the expensive watch on her wrist, Mason in his gray janitor's uniform sitting across from her like they were equals. The video ended with them shaking hands, both smiling. Taken out of context, stripped of the playfulness in their voices, it looked terrible. It looked like a rich woman making fun of a working-class man. It looked like she'd been slumming, playing with someone beneath her for entertainment. Turn it off, Vanessa said quietly. It has 3 million views, Richard continued. The PR team is getting crucified on social media. People are calling you elitist, classist, saying you were mocking him. Some are saying it's romantic, but most I said turn it off. The laptop snapped shut. Around the table, 8 board members stared at her with varying degrees of concern and calculation. They were already wondering how this would affect stock prices, investor confidence, her ability to lead. Vanessa stood up. Meeting adjourned. I'll handle this. She walked out before anyone could argue. Back in her office, she pulled up the video on her own computer and watched it again. And again. And again. Each time she saw something new. The way Mason had hesitated before sitting down, like he knew it was a bad idea but couldn't resist. The genuine surprise on his face when she'd made that idiotic offer. The way she'd looked at him. Not like a janitor, not like an employee, but like a person who'd managed to challenge her in a way no one else had in years. Her assistant knocked. Ms. Whitmore? Mason Reed is asking to see you. Vanessa's stomach dropped. Send him in. Mason entered looking exhausted and angry. He wasn't wearing his uniform, just jeans and a faded jacket. His jaw was tight, and his eyes were hard in a way they hadn't been during their chess games. I need to know if you leaked that video, he said without preamble. What? No, I would never. Because my phone hasn't stopped ringing. Reporters are camped outside my apartment. My daughter's school called asking if she's okay. My mother is worried I'm going to lose my job. He took a step closer. So I need to know if this was some kind of publicity stunt. Vanessa felt heat rise in her face. I don't need publicity stunts, Mr. Reed, and I certainly wouldn't use you for one. Right, because a billionaire CEO would totally spend her Thursday night playing chess with the janitor for any reason other than a story she could tell at cocktail parties. That's not... Vanessa stopped herself, recognizing the defense for what it was. Weak. Ineffective. You're right. I wasn't thinking. I'm sorry. Mason looked surprised by the apology. Some of the anger leaked out of his posture. I just want to know what happens now. Do I still have a job? Of course you have a job. Even though half the internet thinks I'm trying to scam you for money? Even though your board probably wants me gone to make this whole thing disappear? Vanessa hadn't considered that, but now that he'd said it, she knew he was right. Richard had probably already drafted the severance paperwork. Clean break, generous settlement, non-disclosure agreement. Make the problem go away. You're not going anywhere, she said firmly. This is my mess and I'll fix it. How? I don't know yet, but I will. She moved around her desk, suddenly desperate to make him understand. Mason, that night, that wasn't me mocking you. That was me actually enjoying myself for the first time in months. You beat me 6 times and I loved every second of it. Do you know how rare that is? He studied her face like he was trying to figure out if she was lying. Finally, he nodded. Okay, but maybe we should avoid playing chess together for a while. Probably a good idea. He turned to leave, then paused at the door. For the record, I enjoyed it too. You're not as scary as everyone says. Everyone says I'm scary? Terrifying, actually. There are legends. The corner of his mouth twitched. But I figured anyone who'd make that stupid a bet couldn't be completely heartless. Then he was gone, and Vanessa was left standing in her office, smiling despite everything. Sheets. The PR team wanted her to release a statement calling it a joke. The board wanted her to fire Mason quietly. Richard suggested she take a leave of absence until things blew over. Vanessa ignored all of them. Instead, she did something she almost never did. She left the office at 5:30 and went home to her penthouse apartment. She ordered takeout. She turned off her phone. She sat by the window and watched the city lights come on one by one. Around 8, her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "This is Mason. Your assistant gave me your personal number. He says hope that's okay. Just wanted to say thanks for not firing me. Also, Lily saw the video and now she won't stop asking if you're going to be her new mom. Kids, right?" Vanessa found herself laughing. She typed back, "Tell her I need to win at least one game first." Those were the terms. "She says you should practice more. Your daughter sounds like trouble. You have no idea." Vanessa stared at the messages for a long moment. Then she typed, "How is she? You said she has severe asthma." The response took a while to come through. Some days are harder than others. Today was okay. She got through school without needing her rescue inhaler. That's a win in our house. What do the doctors say? That we're managing it as well as we can. That she might grow out of it, or she might not. That we need to keep her away from triggers and hope for the best. Vanessa had never thought much about illness, about the constant low-grade fear of losing someone you loved to something you couldn't control. Her father's death had been sudden, a heart attack at 62, gone before the ambulance arrived. She'd barely had time to process it before she'd been thrown into running the company. That must be hard. It's life. You do what you have to do. She wanted to ask more questions, but she didn't know what she was allowed to ask. They barely knew each other. They'd played chess a few times. That didn't give her the right to dig into his private pain. "Get some sleep," she typed instead. "I'll see you around the office." "Good night, Ms. Whitmore." "Vanessa." "Call me Vanessa." "Good night, Vanessa." She put the phone down and tried to figure out why her chest felt tight. Why a few text messages from a man she barely knew had left her feeling more connected to another human being than years of business dinners and networking events. The answer was obvious, even if she didn't want to admit it. Mason Reed had seen her as a person, not a CEO. He'd challenged her, beaten her, made her laugh. He'd treated their ridiculous bet like a joke between equals instead of a command from someone with power over his livelihood. And now, because of one stupid video, that fragile connection was in danger of being crushed under the weight of public scrutiny and corporate politics. Vanessa Whitmore hadn't built a billion-dollar empire by accepting defeat. She'd done it by being smarter, more ruthless, and more determined than everyone around her. But as she sat in her expensive apartment looking out at the city she'd conquered, she realized that winning at business had been easy compared to this. Because this wasn't about hostile takeovers or shareholder meetings. This was about figuring out how to be a human being instead of a walking profit margin. And she had no idea where to start. The next morning, Vanessa arrived at the office to find protesters outside. Not many, maybe 20 people, but enough to make the security team nervous. They held signs reading, "Respect workers," and "Janitors are people too," and "Check your privilege." She walked past them with her head high and her expression neutral, the way she'd learned to do when hostile journalists surrounded her after acquisitions. Inside, the reception area was tense. Employees whispered in corners. No one made eye contact with her. Richard was waiting by the elevators. "We need to talk." "Later." "Now, Vanessa." She followed him into a conference room where half the board had already assembled. This was an ambush. "We've been discussing the situation," said Patricia Knowles, the board chair. She was 74 and had been friends with Vanessa's father. "The video has cost us 3 points in stock value. Our investors are concerned about leadership stability." "The stock will recover," Vanessa said calmly. "It always does. Not if this becomes a referendum on company culture." That was David Martinez, relatively new to the board and always looking for an angle. "People are digging into how we treat our workforce. They're finding complaints, lawsuits we've settled, turnover rates in service positions. So we fix those things. Or," Patricia said carefully, "you step back for a few months. Let Richard run day-to-day operations while you take some personal time. When things calm down, you come back and no one remembers this ever happened." Vanessa looked around the table. These people had worked with her for years. Some had fought alongside her to save the company. Others had joined after she'd made it successful, attracted by the stability and profit margins she'd created. None of them were looking at her with sympathy. They were looking at her like a problem to be solved. "No," she said simply. "Vanessa," I said, "no. This is my company. I saved it. I built it. And I'm not stepping aside because I played chess with an employee." "It's not about the chess," David said. "It's about judgment, about knowing when you're becoming a liability." Vanessa stood up. She felt something cold and hard settling into her chest, the same feeling she got right before closing a difficult deal. "Let me be very clear. I'm not resigning. I'm not taking leave. And if any of you try to remove me, I will make the fight so ugly and expensive that you'll wish you'd never brought it up. Are we understood?" Patricia sighed. "Vanessa, we're trying to help you." "Then help me by doing your jobs and letting me do mine." She walked out before anyone could respond. Her hands were shaking by the time she reached her office, but she didn't let herself stop moving. She had emails to answer, calls to make, fires to put out. The company needed her focused, not spiraling over a stupid video. Around noon, her assistant knocked. "Ms. Whitmore, there's a child here to see you." Vanessa looked up from her laptop. "A child?" "She says her name is Lily Reed." Vanessa's heart stuttered. "Send her in." The girl who entered was small for 7, wearing a pink backpack almost as big as she was, and holding the hand of an older woman who had to be Mason's mother. Lily had her father's dark eyes and a slightly crooked smile that suggested she was used to getting her way. "Hi," Lily said brightly. "Are you going to marry my dad?" The older woman winced. "Lily, we talked about this, but you said I could ask one question." Vanessa found herself smiling despite everything. She came around her desk and knelt down to Lily's eye level. "That was just a joke, sweetheart. Your dad and I don't really know each other. But you played chess with him." Lily said it like that explained everything. "Dad only plays chess with people he likes. He says most people don't understand it. Your dad's very good at chess. He's good at lots of things." Lily's expression turned serious. "He works really hard so I can go to the doctor and get my medicine. Sometimes he's tired, but he never says so." Vanessa felt something crack inside her chest. She glanced up at the older woman. "I'm sorry. I don't think we've met." "Grace Reed, I'm Mason's mother." She had kind eyes and a firm handshake. "I apologize for barging in. Lily saw you on TV and insisted on meeting you. She can be persistent." "I wonder where she gets that from." Grace laughed. "Mason was the same way as a kid. Once he decided he wanted something, there was no stopping him." Lily was looking around the office with wide eyes. "Your office is really big. Do you work here all by yourself?" "Most of the time, yes." "That sounds lonely." The observation was so direct, so innocent, that Vanessa didn't know how to respond. Out of the mouths of children came uncomfortable truths. "Sometimes it is," she admitted. "You should come have dinner with us," Lily announced. "Dad makes really good spaghetti. Well, it's okay spaghetti, but he tries really hard and that's what matters, right?" Grace put a hand on her granddaughter's shoulder. "Lily, Ms. Whitmore is very busy." "Actually," Vanessa heard herself say, "dinner sounds nice." Grace looked surprised. "You don't have to—" "I'd like to, if it's not an imposition." "Can she come tonight?" Lily bounced on her toes. "Please, Grandma?" "We should check with your father first." Lily pulled out a phone, a simple model with large buttons, and called her dad with the confidence of someone who'd done this 100 times. "Hi, Dad. I'm in Vanessa's office and she wants to come for dinner. Can she? Please, please, please." Vanessa couldn't hear Mason's response, but she saw Lily's face fall slightly. "But, Dad—" Okay, I'll ask." Lily looked up at Vanessa. "Dad says he needs to talk to you first. He wants to know if you're just being nice because I'm a kid or if you actually want to come." Grace looked mortified. Vanessa took the phone gently from Lily's hand. "Mason? I'm sorry." He sounded embarrassed. "I didn't know she was going to ambush you at work." "It's fine. She's delightful." "She's a handful. Look, you don't have to come to dinner. She'll get over it." Vanessa glanced at Lily, who was watching her with hopeful eyes. "What if I want to come?" Mason was quiet for a moment. "Why would you want to do that?" "Because your daughter invited me, and because I'm curious to try this allegedly okay spaghetti." She paused. And because I think we should probably talk about all of this away from cameras and offices and people with opinions. You really want to eat dinner with the janitor? His tone was light, but there was an edge underneath, a challenge. I want to eat dinner with Mason Reed, former world-class chess prodigy and devoted father. The fact that you clean offices at night doesn't factor into it. Another pause. Then, okay, 6:30. I'll text you the address. I'll be there. She handed the phone back to Lily, who immediately started dancing around the office. She's coming, Dad. She said yes. Grace shook her head, but she was smiling. I don't know what you've gotten yourself into, Ms. Whitmore. Vanessa. And honestly, neither do I. After they left, Vanessa sat at her desk and stared at her calendar. She had a dinner meeting with investors at 7, drinks with the head of acquisitions at 8:30, and a call with their Tokyo office at 10. She started canceling them, one by one, watching her assistant's chat messages grow increasingly concerned. At 6:15, she left the office. The protesters had gone home. The building was quiet. She took her own car, a black Mercedes she almost never drove herself, and plugged Mason's address into the navigation system. The route took her out of the financial district, through neighborhoods that got progressively less polished, until she pulled up in front of a modest apartment building in a working-class area she'd never had reason to visit before. The building was old but well-maintained, with a small playground out front where a few kids were playing in the evening light. Vanessa sat in the car for a moment, suddenly terrified. What was she doing? She didn't do casual dinners. She didn't visit employees' homes. She certainly didn't develop personal relationships with people who worked for her company. But Mason didn't feel like an employee. He felt like a mystery she needed to solve, a puzzle she couldn't quite crack. And if there was one thing Vanessa Whitmore couldn't resist, it was a challenge. She got out of the car and walked up to the 3rd floor, following the apartment numbers until she found 3C. Before she could knock, the door flew open and Lily grabbed her hand. You came! I told Dad you would, but he didn't believe me. Lily, let her breathe. Mason appeared behind his daughter, wearing jeans and a plain t-shirt, his hair still damp from a shower. He looked younger than he did in his work uniform, more relaxed despite the obvious tension in his shoulders. Come in. Sorry about the mess. The apartment was small, living room, kitchen, and what looked like 2 tiny bedrooms branching off a short hallway, but it was clean and cheerful. Photos covered the walls. Lily as a baby, Lily's first day of school, Lily blowing out birthday candles. A modest bookshelf held novels, chess books, and medical pamphlets. The furniture was old but comfortable. It was nothing like Vanessa's sterile penthouse. It felt like a home. Wine? Mason offered. Or I have beer, or... Wine is fine. He poured her a glass of red while Lily showed her around the apartment with tour guide enthusiasm. That's my room. I have a nebulizer by my bed in case I have an attack at night. And that's Dad's room. He doesn't let me jump on his bed anymore because I broke it once. And that's the bathroom. We only have one, so sometimes there's a line. Mason handed Vanessa the wine with an apologetic look. She's been practicing this speech all afternoon. It's perfect, Vanessa said honestly. Dinner was indeed okay spaghetti, slightly overcooked noodles and sauce from a jar, but Lily chattered throughout the meal, asking Vanessa 100 questions about her job, her office, whether she had any pets, why she didn't have kids, whether she knew how to play video games, and if she'd ever been to Disneyland. Mason kept trying to rein her in, but Vanessa waved him off. She was fascinated by the way Lily's mind worked, jumping from topic to topic with the fearless curiosity of childhood. After dinner, Grace excused herself to go home, kissing Lily on the head and giving Mason a meaningful look that clearly said, "Be careful." Mason started washing dishes while Lily pulled out a battered chessboard and set it up on the coffee table. "Play with me," she demanded. "I'm not very good," Vanessa warned. "That's okay. I'm teaching Dad my new rules. He says they're cheating, but I say they're creative interpretation." Vanessa laughed and sat down on the floor across from her. Lily's version of chess involved pieces that could move in whatever direction she deemed appropriate at the moment, a rule where you could take back moves if you really needed to, and a special square in the middle of the board that gave you magic powers. It was chaotic and made no sense, and Vanessa loved every second of it. Mason finished the dishes and joined them, sitting next to Vanessa and offering quiet commentary on Lily's increasingly absurd rule changes. His presence was warm and solid beside her, and Vanessa found herself hyper-aware of the few inches between them. Around 8:30, Lily started coughing. It began as a small tickle, but within seconds she was struggling to breathe, her chest heaving with the effort. Mason was on his feet instantly, grabbing an inhaler from a drawer and kneeling beside his daughter. "Easy, baby. You know the drill. Deep breath in. Hold it. Good girl." Vanessa watched, frozen, as Lily used the inhaler and slowly, agonizingly, her breathing returned to normal. The whole episode lasted maybe 3 minutes, but it felt like hours. "Sorry," Lily wheezed. "I got too excited." "Nothing to be sorry for." Mason's voice was steady, but Vanessa could see the fear in his eyes. This was his normal. This constant vigilance, this knowledge that any moment could turn dangerous. "Time for your nebulizer in bed." "But Vanessa just got here." "Vanessa will come back another time, right?" He looked at her, and there was something vulnerable in his expression, a question that went beyond dinner plans. "Right," Vanessa said firmly. "I promise." She stayed while Mason got Lily ready for bed, listening to their routine through the open door. Medicine first, then teeth, then 3 stories. Lily was a tough negotiator, then songs. Then finally, reluctantly, Lily's breathing settled into the deep rhythm of sleep. Mason came back out looking exhausted. He collapsed on the couch beside Vanessa and ran his hands through his hair. "This is why I quit chess," he said quietly. "The circuit wanted me to compete in Moscow during her first major hospitalization. I was on a plane halfway there when Grace called and said Lily had stopped breathing. They had to intubate her. She was 3 years old. Vanessa didn't say anything. There was nothing to say. I turned the plane around, withdrew from the tournament. The organizers were furious. My sponsors dropped me. My coach said I was throwing away my career." He laughed bitterly. "But what career is worth more than watching your daughter die alone in a hospital?" "None of them," Vanessa said. "I thought chess was everything. I thought if I wasn't playing at the highest level, I was nobody. Took me a long time to realize that being Lily's dad was a bigger accomplishment than any championship." Vanessa looked at him, really looked at him, and saw past the janitor's uniform and the exhaustion. She saw a man who'd sacrificed everything for someone else, who'd chosen love over ambition, who got up every day and faced the possibility of loss with courage she couldn't imagine possessing. "You're extraordinary," she said. Mason met her eyes. "I'm really not. I'm just a dad doing what dads do. Most people wouldn't have made that choice. Then most people aren't worth knowing." The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. Vanessa realized her hand had somehow ended up next to his on the couch, their fingers almost touching. She could close that distance. It would be easy. But Mason pulled away first, standing up and moving to the window. "You should probably go. It's getting late." Vanessa stood, disappointment mixing with relief. "Thank you for dinner. Thank you for coming, and for not, making this weird." "I think it's already weird," Vanessa said honestly. "But maybe weird isn't bad." He smiled at that. "Lily will want you to come back." "Just Lily?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. Mason looked at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "Good night, Vanessa." "Good night, Mason." She drove home through the dark streets, her mind replaying every moment of the evening. The awful spaghetti, the magic chess, Lily's laughter, Mason's hands, gentle and sure as he helped his daughter breathe, the photos on the walls, the small, cramped, beautiful life they'd built together. By the time she reached her penthouse, Vanessa knew 3 things with absolute certainty. 1, she was developing feelings for Mason Reed that went way beyond fascination. 2, those feelings were dangerous for both of them, given the power imbalance and the media circus already surrounding them. 3, she was going to pursue them anyway, because for the first time in her entire life, she'd found something, someone, that mattered more than winning. And Vanessa Whitmore never walked away from something that mattered, even if it scared the hell out of her. The following weeks developed a rhythm Vanessa hadn't known she was missing. She started leaving the office earlier, not every night, but enough that Richard stopped looking surprised when she packed up at 6. She'd drive across town to that modest apartment building, sometimes bringing takeout, sometimes showing up empty-handed just to sit on the floor and play Lily's chaotic version of chess. Mason never asked why she kept coming back. Maybe he understood that she didn't have a good answer, or maybe he was just as confused by this thing growing between them as she was. 3 weeks after that first dinner, Vanessa found herself in their apartment on a Friday night, helping Lily with a school project about family trees. The assignment required photos and stories about relatives, and Lily had insisted Vanessa needed to be included. "But I'm not family," Vanessa had protested. "Yet," Lily said matter-of-factly, as if marriage were an inevitable conclusion rather than a joke that had gotten wildly out of hand. Mason was working his night shift, so it was just the three of them, Vanessa, Lily, and Grace, who was knitting in the corner and watching their interaction with poorly concealed amusement. "Tell me about your parents," Lily demanded, arranging photos on poster board with intense concentration. Vanessa hesitated. She rarely talked about her family, especially her father. "My dad built Whitmore Industries from almost nothing. He was brilliant, but difficult, demanding. He expected perfection from everyone, especially me." "Did he love you?" The question was so direct it knocked the air from Vanessa's lungs. "I think so. He just had a hard time showing it." "That's sad," Lily said simply. "Dad tells me he loves me every single day, sometimes twice." "Your dad's a good man." "The best." Lily glued a photo of Mason onto the poster board with excessive amounts of glue stick. "When I grow up, I want to marry someone exactly like him." Grace chuckled from her corner. "Better tell your father that. He'll want to start interviewing candidates now." They worked for another hour before Lily's eyelids started drooping. Vanessa helped Grace get her ready for bed, learning the precise routine. Nebulizer first, then inhaler, then the special breathing exercises Mason had taught her. It was complicated and nerve-wracking, and Vanessa marveled at how Grace and Mason did this every single night without complaint. After Lily fell asleep, Grace made tea and the two of them sat at the small kitchen table. The apartment felt different at night, quieter and more intimate. Through the window, Vanessa could see the city lights in the distance, her world and this one existing in the same space but feeling miles apart. "Can I ask you something?" Grace said, wrapping her hands around her mug. "Of course." "What are you doing here?" The bluntness caught Vanessa off guard. "I'm sorry? You're a billionaire CEO. You could be anywhere, doing anything. Instead, you're spending your Friday nights helping a 7-year-old with craft projects." Grace's tone wasn't accusatory, just genuinely curious. "I'm trying to understand what you want from my son." Vanessa stared into her tea, searching for an honest answer. "I don't know what I want. I just know that when I'm here, I feel more like myself than I do anywhere else. Does that make sense?" "It makes sense. It's also terrifying." "Why terrifying?" Grace set down her mug. "Because Mason's been through enough. After Sarah died, that's Lily's mother, he barely survived it. Threw himself into caring for Lily because if he stopped moving, he'd fall apart. It took him years to even smile again." She met Vanessa's eyes. "He's happy now. He's found peace. And I'm afraid you're going to disrupt that." "I would never hurt him." "Not intentionally, maybe. But your worlds are very different. Eventually, you'll get bored of playing house in our little apartment. You'll remember you have board meetings and galas and a life that doesn't include spaghetti dinners with a janitor and his sick kid." Grace's voice was gentle but firm. "When that happens, Mason will understand. But Lily won't. She's already talking about you like you're part of the family." The words hit Vanessa harder than any business criticism ever had. Because Grace was right. What was she doing? She'd been so caught up in the novelty of this connection, the thrill of feeling something real, that she hadn't considered the consequences. Lily was 7 years old and already dealing with a chronic illness that could kill her. She didn't need the added trauma of an adult who drifted in and out of her life on a whim. "I care about them," Vanessa said quietly. "Both of them. I know it's fast and probably crazy, but I do. Caring isn't enough. My son needs someone who's willing to stay when things get hard. And trust me, things get hard. There are hospital visits at 3 in the morning. There are days when Lily can't breathe and we all panic. There are medical bills that never stop coming, no matter how many extra shifts Mason picks up." Grace's expression softened slightly. "Can you handle that reality? Or are you just enchanted by the idea of it?" Vanessa didn't have an answer. She'd never been tested like that before. Her challenges involved hostile takeovers and quarterly reports, not watching a child struggle for breath in an emergency room. Before she could formulate a response, Vanessa's phone buzzed. She glanced at it and her stomach dropped. Richard's name flashed on the screen, followed by a text that made her blood run cold. Board meeting moved to Monday morning. They're calling for a vote of no confidence. You need to get ahead of this. Grace must have seen something in her face. Everything okay? I have to go. I'm sorry. She grabbed her coat and purse, suddenly desperate to leave before the walls closed in completely. At the door, she paused and looked back at Grace. For what it's worth, I'm not enchanted by an idea. I'm enchanted by who they are. I just don't know if that's enough. Neither do I, Grace said. But I hope you figure it out before someone gets hurt. Vanessa drove home too fast, her mind racing through scenarios and strategies. A vote of no confidence meant the board had the numbers to remove her. She'd have to call in favors, make promises, maybe offer up Richard as interim CEO while she stepped back temporarily. It was salvageable. Everything was salvageable if you were willing to fight dirty enough. By the time she reached her penthouse, she had a plan. She spent the weekend on the phone, securing votes, offering concessions, reminding certain board members of skeletons in closets they'd prefer stayed buried. It was brutal and exhausting and exactly the kind of corporate warfare she excelled at. Monday morning, she walked into the board meeting with her head high and her ammunition ready. Patricia opened with the expected speech about fiduciary responsibility and leadership stability. David chimed in with concerns about company culture and employee relations. Two other board members Vanessa had considered allies stayed conspicuously silent. Then Richard, her CFO, her supposed friend, cleared his throat. I think we need to consider what's best for the company long term, he said, not meeting her eyes. Vanessa has done incredible work, but perhaps it's time for a transition. I've prepared a proposal for... Let me stop you right there. Vanessa's voice was cold and sharp. She opened her laptop and projected a presentation onto the screen. Since we're talking about what's best for the company, let's review some numbers. She walked them through 5 years of growth under her leadership. Revenue increases, market share gains, successful acquisitions that her critics had called reckless, but that had paid off spectacularly. She showed them competitor analysis, demonstrating how Whitmore Industries had outperformed every rival in their sector. Then she pulled up social media analytics from the past 3 weeks. That video you're also worried about? It's been viewed 50 million times. Our brand recognition has increased 30%. We've had more organic press coverage in the last month than in the previous year combined. And while some of it's negative, most people find the story charming. She clicked to the next slide. 68% of respondents in our latest consumer survey said the video made them view our company more favorably. They like the idea of a CEO who doesn't take herself too seriously. Patricia frowned. That's all well and good, but I'm not finished. I've also been investigating our employment practices, as some of you suggested. Vanessa's smile was razor sharp. Turns out we have a problem. Our service workers are underpaid, overworked, and dealing with inadequate health insurance. Some have been here for decades without meaningful raises. Several are working second jobs just to make ends meet. Richard shifted uncomfortably. Vanessa, we've discussed this. The margins in that sector are fine. We can afford to do better. In fact, I've drafted a proposal to increase wages for all service positions by 20%, improve health coverage, and create a scholarship fund for employees' children. It'll cost us roughly $3 million annually, which is less than we spent on executive bonuses last year. You can't just unilaterally decide, David started. I'm not deciding anything. I'm putting it to a vote. But here's the thing. Vanessa leaned forward, letting her gaze sweep across every face at the table. If you vote to remove me, this proposal dies. You can go back to business as usual, squeezing every penny out of the people who keep this building running. But that video isn't going anywhere. People are watching us now. And if I'm removed right after exposing our poor treatment of workers, what do you think that looks like? The silence was deafening. On the other hand, Vanessa continued, if you support both me and this proposal, we become the company that actually cares about its employees. We get to write the narrative. We turn a potential PR disaster into a story about positive change. She closed her laptop. Your choice. Patricia looked at the others, then back at Vanessa. You've backed us into a corner. I learned from the best. My father taught me that in business, you either control the narrative or it controls you. And the janitor? David asked. What's your plan there? That's personal and none of your business. It becomes our business when it affects the company. Then let me be crystal clear. Vanessa stood up, placing her hands flat on the table. Mason Reed is an employee who beat me at chess. I made a joke that got taken out of context. If any of you have a problem with me spending time with him outside of work, I'd love to hear your legal reasoning for why that's grounds for removal. Last I checked, there's no company policy against CEOs having friends. Friends, David repeated skeptically. Yes, friends. Is that so hard to believe? No one answered. After a long moment, Patricia called for the vote. The proposal for employee benefits passed with one dissenting vote. David, predictably. The vote of no confidence failed to even get a second. Vanessa had won. But as she walked back to her office, the victory felt hollow. She'd saved her position by playing the same manipulative games that had isolated her in the first place. She'd threatened people, leveraged their weaknesses, forced them into a corner. It had worked, but at what cost? Her phone buzzed. A text from Mason. Lily wants to know if you're coming over tonight. No pressure. Oh. Vanessa stared at the message. She should be celebrating. She should be calling her team together and planning the rollout of the new benefits program. Instead, all she wanted was to sit on a worn couch in a cramped apartment and watch a 7-year-old cheat at chess. I'll be there at 6, she typed back. Everything okay? She thought about Grace's question. What did she want from Mason? She thought about the board meeting, the strategic maneuvering, the cold calculation that had become second nature. She thought about Lily asking if her father had loved her, and not being sure of the answer. Just a rough day. Looking forward to seeing you guys. We'll make it better. Lily's making you a card. Vanessa smiled despite herself. Tell her I can't wait to see it. She got through the rest of the day on autopilot, signing documents and fielding calls without really processing any of it. At 5:30, she left the office and drove across town, leaving behind the glass towers and heading toward the neighborhood that had started to feel more like home than her own apartment. When she knocked on Mason's door, Lily answered wearing a paper crown and holding a hand-drawn card that read, "You're the best almost stepmom ever," in crayon. "I made you queen for the day," Lily announced. "That means you get extra dessert and you don't have to do dishes." Vanessa felt tears prick her eyes. "Thank you, sweetheart. This is perfect." Mason appeared behind his daughter, wearing an apron that said, "Kiss the cook," that was clearly a gag gift. His hair was messy, and he had flour on his cheek, and Vanessa wanted to kiss him so badly it physically hurt. "Rough day?" he asked softly. "Something like that." "Well, you're just in time. Lily and I are attempting homemade pizza. I say attempting because last time we set off the smoke alarm." "It was only a little fire," Lily protested. "It was definitely more than a little fire." They moved into the kitchen where pizza dough was spread across the counter, along with various toppings in mismatched bowls. Mason handed Vanessa an apron and showed her how to stretch the dough, while Lily narrated their techniques with the confidence of a cooking show host. "The secret is to not think too hard," Mason said, his hands moving over the dough with practiced ease. "You overthink it, you tense up, and the whole thing tears." Is that a pizza metaphor or a life metaphor? Can it be both? They worked together in comfortable silence, occasionally bumping into each other in the small kitchen. Every accidental touch felt electric. Vanessa was hyper-aware of Mason's presence beside her, the warmth of his shoulder against hers, the way his fingers brushed her hand when he passed her the sauce. Lily chattered about her day at school, about a boy named Tyler who'd been mean to her friend, about a science project on volcanoes that she was convinced she could improve with real lava. Mason listened with the kind of attention Vanessa had rarely given anyone, asking follow-up questions and offering gentle guidance when Lily's ideas veered into dangerous territory. This was what Grace had meant about reality. This was the everyday grind of parenting, homework and dinner, and negotiations over bedtime. It wasn't glamorous, it was exhausting, repetitive, and occasionally frustrating. But watching Mason navigate it with patience and humor, Vanessa understood why he'd given up chess. This was harder. This required skills no tournament could teach. The pizza came out slightly burned on one side and perfect on the other. They ate it at the coffee table because the kitchen table was still covered in Lily's school projects. Lily demanded they each share the best part of their day, a tradition Mason explained they'd started after Sarah died. "My best part was making the crown for Vanessa," Lily said through a mouthful of pizza. "What was yours, Dad?" "Coming home and finding you hadn't burned down the apartment." "That's not a real answer." "Fine. My best part was realizing I have enough in the bank to take you to that science museum you've been begging about. We'll go this weekend." Lily squealed and launched herself at Mason, nearly knocking over his water. He caught her easily, laughing, and Vanessa felt something warm and painful expand in her chest. "What about you?" Mason asked, looking at Vanessa over Lily's head. "What was your best part?" Vanessa thought about the board meeting, about crushing her opponents and securing her position. That should have been her answer. That was always her answer. The victory, the win, the moment she proved she was smarter and tougher than everyone else. "This," she said instead, "right now." Mason's expression softened into something that made her breath catch. For a moment, the air between them felt charged with all the things they hadn't said yet, all the possibilities neither of them had acknowledged out loud. Then Lily burped loudly, and the moment shattered. They dissolved into laughter, and the rest of the evening passed in a blur of terrible TV shows, and Lily's magic chess, and eventually, reluctantly, bedtime. After Lily was asleep, Mason and Vanessa sat on the couch, with the kind of exhaustion that comes from a full day of just living. Mason had one arm stretched across the back of the couch, his fingers almost touching Vanessa's shoulder. She'd taken off her heels and tucked her feet under her, more relaxed than she'd been in months. "So," Mason said eventually, "want to tell me about your rough day?" "The board tried to remove me. I convinced them otherwise." "Convinced how?" "By reminding them that I'm very good at my job and very bad to have as an enemy." Mason was quiet for a moment. "Does that make you feel powerful?" "It makes me feel tired." "Then why do it?" Vanessa considered the question. "Because it's what I know how to do. My father trained me to see every interaction as a negotiation, every relationship as a power dynamic. You identify weaknesses and exploit them before someone does it to you." "That sounds lonely." "It is." The admission came easier than she expected. "I spent so long building walls that I forgot why I built them in the first place." Mason turned slightly toward her. "And now?" "Now I'm sitting in your apartment eating burned pizza and wondering why I spent 35 years missing out on this." "This is pretty great," Mason agreed, "but it's not always like this. There are hospital visits and panic attacks and nights when I lie awake terrified I'm going to lose her. There are days when I'm so tired I can barely think straight, and I still have to show up for my shift because the bills don't stop coming." "Grace warned me," Vanessa said. "She asked if I could handle the reality or if I was just enchanted by the idea of it." "Smart woman, my mother. What did you tell her?" "That I didn't know." Vanessa met his eyes. "I've never had to take care of anyone but myself. I don't know if I'm capable of being what you and Lily need." "We don't need anything from you, Vanessa. You being here is a choice, not an obligation." "But what if I can't do it? What if things get hard and I panic and run?" Mason reached over and took her hand. The gesture was simple, but it sent electricity through her entire body. "Then you run. I'd rather know now that this isn't something you can handle than watch you force yourself into a life that makes you miserable. You're very understanding about the possibility of me abandoning you. I'm practical. I've learned that you can't make people stay. They either want to or they don't." His thumb traced circles on the back of her hand. "But for what it's worth, I hope you stay." "Yeah?" "Yeah. Lily loves you, and I—" He stopped himself, looking uncertain for the first time since she'd met him. "I like having you around. You're good for us. You make Lily happy, and you make me remember there's more to life than just surviving." Vanessa wanted to close the distance between them, to kiss him and stop overthinking everything. But Grace's warning echoed in her mind. She couldn't be impulsive about this. Too many people would get hurt if she got it wrong. "I should go," she said reluctantly. "Early morning tomorrow." Mason nodded but didn't let go of her hand. "Come back soon?" "Try to keep me away." He walked her to the door, and they stood in the hallway for a long moment, neither wanting to say goodbye. Finally, Vanessa forced herself to move. She made it halfway down the stairs before she heard Mason call her name. She turned. He was standing in his doorway, backlit by the warm light from his apartment. "For the record," he said, "I think you're capable of a lot more than you give yourself credit for. You just have to decide if you want to try." Then he went back inside, and Vanessa was left standing alone in the stairwell, her heart racing and her mind spinning with possibilities. The next few weeks passed in a strange liminal space where Vanessa felt like she was living two separate lives. During the day, she was the ruthless CEO, implementing her new employee benefits program while fielding questions from journalists who wanted to know if she was really dating the janitor. At night, she was just Vanessa, sitting on a worn couch and learning how to be part of something bigger than herself. She started spending most evenings at Mason's apartment. Some nights she'd arrive before he left for his shift, and they'd have an hour together while Grace watched Lily. Other nights she'd stay late and be there when he got home at dawn, having fallen asleep on his couch while helping Lily with homework. It was messy and unplanned, and nothing like the structured life she'd built for herself. It was also the happiest she'd ever been. But the media attention wasn't dying down. If anything, it was getting worse. Photographers started camping outside Mason's building. Tabloids ran stories speculating about their relationship, some painting it as a romance, and others suggesting Vanessa was exploiting Mason for publicity. The company's social media accounts were flooded with opinions, both supportive and vicious. Through it all, Mason remained quietly steady. He didn't read the articles or respond to the attention. He just kept showing up for his shifts and taking care of his daughter and being exactly who he'd always been. Vanessa envied that stability. She'd spent her whole life performing different versions of herself depending on who was watching. With the board, she was authoritative and strategic. With investors, charming and confident. With journalists, guarded and professional. But with Mason and Lily, she didn't know what character to play. They just wanted her to be herself, whoever that was. 6 weeks after the video first leaked, everything fell apart. It started with a phone call at 2 a.m. Vanessa was asleep in her penthouse when her phone lit up with Grace's number. "Vanessa, we're at County General. Lily's having a severe attack. Mason asked me to call you." Vanessa was out of bed and dressed in under 2 minutes. She drove to the hospital, breaking every speed limit, her hands shaking on the wheel. By the time she burst through the emergency room doors, she was barely holding it together. Grace met her in the waiting room. Her face was pale, and her hands were trembling. "They've got her on oxygen and steroids. Mason's with her. It's bad, Vanessa. Worse than usual." "Can I see her?" "Not yet. They're stabilizing her." Vanessa sank into a plastic chair, feeling utterly useless. This was exactly what Grace had warned her about. This was the reality. The 3 a.m. hospital visits, the terror of watching a child struggle to breathe, the helplessness of being able to do nothing but wait. An hour passed, then 2. Grace dozed off in her chair, but Vanessa couldn't sleep. She kept picturing Lily's smile, her paper crown, her absolute certainty that Vanessa belonged in their family. What if she didn't make it? What if all those moments had been borrowed time and now... "Vanessa?" She looked up to find Mason standing in front of her. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in one night. His face was drawn and his eyes were red and he was shaking. She stood up immediately. "How is she?" "Stable. They want to keep her for observation, but she's breathing on her own now." His voice cracked. "I thought I was going to lose her. For a few minutes there, I really thought..." Vanessa pulled him into her arms before he could finish. Mason collapsed against her, his weight heavy and solid and real. She felt him shaking, felt the fear and exhaustion pouring out of him, and she held on tighter. "She's okay," Vanessa murmured. "She's okay." "I can't do this anymore," Mason said against her shoulder. "I can't keep living like this, waiting for the next attack, wondering if this time will be the time I lose her. You're not alone. I'm here." He pulled back to look at her, and there was something raw and desperate in his expression. "Are you? Because in a few hours you're going to leave this hospital and go back to your office and your board meetings and your life. And I'm going to be here dealing with insurance companies and missed shifts and trying to figure out how to pay for all of this." The words stung because they were true. Vanessa had been playing at this life, dipping in and out whenever it was convenient. She'd convinced herself that showing up was enough, that her presence mattered. But Mason was right. She always had an exit strategy. She could always go back to her safe, controlled world where the biggest crisis was a hostile shareholder. "You're right," she said quietly. "I'm sorry." Mason scrubbed his hands over his face. "I shouldn't have said that. I'm just tired and scared and..." "No, you should have said it. I've been fooling myself thinking I could be part of this without actually committing to anything." Vanessa took a shaky breath. "What do you need from me?" "Really?" "I don't know. I just know that I can't do this halfway anymore. Either you're in this with us or you're not." Before Vanessa could respond, a nurse appeared. "Mr. Reed, Your daughter's asking for you. Mason glanced at Vanessa, then back at the nurse. Can Vanessa come too? The nurse hesitated. Family only, I'm afraid. She is family. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. The nurse looked at Vanessa, then nodded. All right, follow me. They walked through the sterile corridors in silence. Vanessa's heart was pounding so hard she could barely hear anything else. Mason had called her family. In front of a nurse, in front of his mother, he'd claimed her as something more than a friend or a complicated whatever this was. Lily was in a small room, propped up on pillows with an oxygen cannula in her nose and monitors beeping quietly. She looked tiny and fragile and nothing like the energetic child who bossed Vanessa around during chess games. But when she saw them, she smiled. You came. Of course I came, Vanessa said, moving to her bedside. You think I'd miss seeing you? I had a bad attack. Dad was really scared. I was terrified, Mason admitted, taking Lily's hand. But you're tough. You fought through it. Can Vanessa stay? Lily asked. I don't like hospitals. They're scary. Vanessa looked at Mason, who nodded. She pulled up a chair and sat down, taking Lily's other hand. I'll stay as long as they let me. Promise? The weight of that one word nearly crushed her. This wasn't about tonight. This was about all the nights to come, the uncertainty and fear and responsibility that came with loving someone this vulnerable. This was Lily asking if Vanessa was serious, if she could be counted on, if she was worth trusting. Vanessa thought about her father, who taught her that promises were leverage and emotions were weakness. She thought about the board meeting where she'd manipulated and threatened her way to victory. She thought about all the ways she'd trained herself to avoid this exact moment, this terrifying leap into the unknown. Then she looked at Lily's hopeful face and Mason's exhausted one and realized she'd already made her choice. Somewhere between the first chess game and now, she'd stopped being able to walk away. I promise, Vanessa said. I'm not going anywhere. Lily fell asleep an hour later, her breathing steady and even despite the oxygen cannula. Mason dozed in the chair beside her bed, his hand still wrapped around his daughter's. Vanessa sat on the other side, watching them both in the dim hospital light, wondering how she'd ended up here and why it felt more right than anything else in her life. Around 5 in the morning, a doctor came in to check Lily's vitals. She was a woman in her 40s with tired eyes and coffee stains on her white coat. She reviewed the charts, adjusted some settings on the monitors, and then turned to Mason. She's doing much better. We'll keep her until this afternoon, run some tests, make sure everything's stable, but I think she'll be fine to go home. Mason exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for hours. Thank you. You know the drill. Watch for any respiratory distress, keep her on her maintenance medications, follow up with her pulmonologist next week. The doctor glanced at Vanessa, then back at Mason. You've got a good support system. That helps. After she left, Mason looked at Vanessa. His eyes were bloodshot and his hair was a mess, and he'd never looked more beautiful to her. You should go, he said softly. Get some sleep. I'll call you when we're home. I'm not leaving. Vanessa, I made a promise, remember? I'm staying. Something shifted in his expression, a guardedness giving way to something raw and vulnerable. Okay? They sat in silence as the sun came up outside the hospital windows, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Vanessa thought about all the sunrises she'd missed, buried in her office or flying to some meeting halfway across the world. She'd treated time like a resource to be optimized, every minute scheduled and accounted for. But this morning, sitting in an uncomfortable hospital chair watching a 7-year-old sleep, she understood that some moments couldn't be scheduled. They just had to be lived. Around 8, Grace arrived with coffee and clean clothes for Mason. She took one look at Vanessa and raised her eyebrows. You stayed. I stayed. Grace handed her a coffee without another word, but there was something new in her eyes. Not quite approval, but maybe the beginning of it, or at least less suspicion. Lily woke up around 9, groggy and cranky but breathing normally. She demanded pancakes, which the nurse said was a good sign. They compromised on hospital oatmeal, which Lily declared the worst thing ever created by humans. Worse than broccoli? Mason asked. Way worse. This is like if broccoli and sadness had a baby. Vanessa laughed so hard she nearly spilled her coffee. Even Grace cracked a smile. The tension that had gripped all of them since the middle of the night finally started to ease. The doctor discharged Lily around 2 in the afternoon with a prescription for stronger steroids and instructions to take it easy for a few days. Mason carried her to the parking lot while Vanessa and Grace gathered the various bags and paperwork. Outside, photographers were waiting. They must have gotten word that Vanessa was at the hospital. A dozen cameras started flashing the moment they stepped through the automatic doors. Questions came from every direction, overlapping and aggressive. "Vanessa, is this your daughter? Are you and Mason Reed in a relationship? How long have you been involved with your employee? Is this why the board tried to remove you?" Mason's face went pale. He held Lily tighter, trying to shield her face from the cameras. Lily started crying, overwhelmed by the noise and the lights and the strangers shouting questions. Vanessa felt rage flood through her, hot and protective and fierce. "Back off," she snapped, stepping between the photographers and Mason. "She's 7 years old and she just spent the night in the hospital. Have some decency." "Is it true you promised to marry him if he beat you at chess? Is this relationship affecting your ability to lead Whitmore Industries? How does the board feel about—" Vanessa pulled out her phone and called her head of security. Within minutes, 2 large men in suits appeared and created a barrier between them and the photographers. They made it to Vanessa's car without further incident, but the damage was done. Lily was still crying, Mason looked furious, and Grace was muttering things about the media that would have made a sailor blush. "I'm so sorry," Vanessa said once they were safely inside the car. "I didn't think they'd come to the hospital." "It's not your fault," Mason said, but his voice was tight. He was stroking Lily's hair, trying to calm her down. "Hey, Bug, it's okay. They're gone now." "Why were they yelling?" Lily sobbed. "Why did they want to take our picture?" "Because some people are nosy and rude," Grace said from the front seat. "Don't you worry about them." Vanessa drove them back to the apartment in tense silence. She kept glancing in the rearview mirror at Mason, who was staring out the window with a clenched jaw. She'd brought this chaos into their lives. Her stupid joke, her careless promise, her inability to see past her own amusement, all of it had led to this moment, with a sick child crying in the back seat because strangers with cameras wouldn't leave them alone. When they got to the apartment building, Vanessa half expected more photographers, but the street was empty. Mason carried Lily upstairs while Grace and Vanessa followed with the hospital bags. Inside, Mason settled Lily on the couch with her favorite blanket and turned on cartoons. "I need to talk to Vanessa," he told Grace. "Can you sit with her?" Grace nodded, already moving toward her granddaughter. Mason jerked his head toward the kitchen, and Vanessa followed, her stomach twisting with dread. He closed the door behind them and leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "This can't keep happening." "I know. I'll talk to my security team, make sure—" "That's not what I mean." Mason's voice was quiet but firm. "I mean all of this. The media circus, the speculation, the photographers showing up at hospitals. It's not fair to Lily." Vanessa felt cold. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying maybe we need to take a step back. Put some distance between us until things calm down." "You want me to leave?" "I want my daughter to feel safe. I want her to be able to leave the apartment without cameras in her face. I want—" He stopped, ran his hands through his hair. "I don't know what I want. I just know this isn't working. So we stop," Vanessa said, trying to keep her voice steady. "We tell everyone it was just a friendship, nothing more. We kill the story. And then what? You go back to your life and we go back to ours and we pretend the last 2 months didn't happen? If that's what you need." Mason looked at her for a long moment. "Is that what you want?" Vanessa thought about lying. It would be easier, cleaner. She could walk away with her dignity intact, protect herself from the vulnerability that terrified her. But she'd already made a promise to Lily, and she was discovering that keeping promises meant being honest even when it hurt. "No," she said. "That's the last thing I want. But I'm not going to force myself into your life if I'm making everything worse." "You're not making everything worse. You're just—" He struggled for words. "You're a complication I didn't plan for. You and your world and all the chaos that comes with you. And I don't know how to protect Lily from that. So teach me." Vanessa moved closer to him, desperate to make him understand. "Tell me what you need. Tell me how to be better at this. I don't know if you can be. You're a billionaire CEO. Your life is public by default. And my life is private by necessity. Those two things don't fit together. They can if we want them to. Want isn't always enough. The words hung heavy between them. Vanessa wanted to argue, to convince him that they could make it work, but she could see the exhaustion in his eyes. He'd spent the night terrified for his daughter's life, and now he was dealing with photographers and difficult conversations when he should be resting. "Okay," she said quietly. "I'll go. But Mason, for what it's worth, I meant what I said in the hospital. I'm not going anywhere unless you tell me to." "I'm not telling you to go. I'm just asking for some space to figure out how to handle all of this." Vanessa nodded and turned toward the door. Before she could leave, Mason caught her wrist. "Wait." She looked back at him. His expression was conflicted, torn between self-preservation and something else she couldn't quite read. "I don't want you to go," he said. "I want you to stay and watch movies with Lily and eat terrible takeout and pretend none of this other stuff exists. But I can't do that. I have to think about what's best for her, even if it's not what I want." "What do you want?" Mason pulled her closer, and suddenly they were inches apart, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating off him. "You. I want you. I've wanted you since that first night when you laughed after I beat you at chess. But wanting something doesn't mean it's good for you." Vanessa's breath caught. Before she could second-guess herself, she closed the distance and kissed him. For a moment, Mason froze. Then he was kissing her back, his hands coming up to cup her face, and everything else disappeared. The hospital, the photographers, the fear and uncertainty, all of it burned away in the heat of this one perfect moment. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Mason rested his forehead against hers. "That was a bad idea," he whispered. "Terrible idea," Vanessa agreed. "We should definitely not do that again." "Absolutely not." They kissed again anyway, this time slower, deeper. Vanessa felt like she was falling and flying at the same time, terrified and exhilarated. When they finally separated, Mason looked dazed. "We still need space," he said, but he didn't sound convinced anymore. "Okay. How much space?" "I don't know. A few days? A week? I need to make sure Lily's okay and figure out how to handle the media stuff without putting her in the spotlight." Vanessa nodded, trying to ignore the ache in her chest. "I understand. Take whatever time you need." She forced herself to walk out of the kitchen, to say goodbye to Grace and Lily, to leave the apartment even though every instinct screamed at her to stay. In the car, she sat for a long moment with her hands on the steering wheel, trying to process everything that had happened in the last 12 hours. Then her phone rang. "Richard, where have you been?" he demanded. "I've been trying to reach you all morning. I was at the hospital. What's wrong?" "What's wrong is that there are photos of you leaving County General with Mason Reed and his daughter all over the internet. The board is losing their minds. David is calling for another emergency meeting." Vanessa closed her eyes. Of course he was. "Tell them I'll be there in an hour." "Vanessa, they want your resignation this time. They're not messing around." "Neither am I. Set up the meeting." She hung up and drove back to the office, her mind already shifting into combat mode. She'd spent the morning being vulnerable and human, but now it was time to be the CEO again. Time to put on armor and fight. The board meeting was every bit as hostile as she'd expected. David led the charge, presenting a slide deck full of negative press coverage and social media commentary. Patricia looked sympathetic but resolved. Even Richard seemed uncertain about defending her. "This has gone too far," David said. "You're not just affecting the company's reputation anymore. You're becoming a liability. The smart move is to step down gracefully, let Richard take over for 6 months, and then we can reassess." "I'm not stepping down," Vanessa said calmly. "Then we'll vote to remove you." "Go ahead. You'll need a supermajority, and last I checked, you don't have the votes." David smiled. It was not a nice smile. "Actually, things have changed since our last meeting. I've been in touch with our major shareholders. They're concerned about leadership stability. If I call for a vote right now, you'd lose." Vanessa looked around the table, reading faces, doing quick calculations. He was right. The momentum had shifted. Too much controversy, too much distraction. Even her allies looked like they were ready to cut their losses. "Fine," she said. "Call the vote." "Vanessa, wait," Patricia started. "No, let's do this now. Get it over with." The vote was swift and brutal. 7 in favor of removal, 3 opposed. Just like that, Vanessa Whitmore was no longer CEO of the company she'd saved and rebuilt. She stood up, gathered her things, and walked toward the door with her head high. At the threshold, she turned back. "I hope you're all proud of yourselves," she said quietly. "You just fired someone for having the audacity to care about another human being." That's the precedent you're setting. That's the message you're sending to every employee in this building. Keep your personal life separate, don't get attached, and definitely don't fall in love with anyone who doesn't fit our idea of appropriate. "This isn't about love," David said. "It's about judgment." "You're right. It is about judgment, and yours is terrible." She walked out, and this time she didn't look back. Her office was still technically hers until the end of the day, so she packed up her personal items in a daze. Photos of her father, the marble chess set, awards and certificates that suddenly felt meaningless. Her assistant came in crying, and Vanessa had to comfort her even though she could barely hold herself together. By 5 o'clock, she was done. She took one last look at the office that had been her sanctuary and her prison for so many years, then walked out. The security guard at the front desk looked uncomfortable as he collected her badge. "I'm sorry, Ms. Whitmore." "It's fine, Frank. Not your fault." Outside, the November air was cold and sharp. Vanessa stood on the sidewalk in front of Whitmore Industries, the building that bore her name, and felt completely untethered. She'd built her entire identity around being CEO. Without that, who was she? Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Just saw the news. Are you okay?" It took her a moment to realize it was Mason. She'd never programmed his number into her contacts, some superstitious part of her afraid that making it official would jinx things. "Not really," she typed back. "I got fired." Her phone rang immediately. "You what?" Mason's voice was sharp with concern. "The board voted to remove me. Apparently I'm too much of a distraction." She tried to laugh, but it came out wrong. "Turns out caring about people is bad for business." "Vanessa, I'm so sorry. This is my fault." "It's not your fault. It's mine. I knew the risks and I didn't care because—" She stopped herself. "Because what?" "Because being with you felt more important than anything else. Because for the first time in my life, I wanted something that wasn't about power or control. Because you and Lily showed me what actually matters. Because I'm stubborn," she said instead. "Where's Lily?" "Asleep on the couch. She's okay. Grace is here." "Good. That's good. Are you alone right now?" Vanessa looked around at the empty sidewalk, the indifferent city flowing past her. "Yeah. Come over." "You said you needed space." "Screw space. You just lost your job and you shouldn't be alone. Come over." Vanessa felt tears prick her eyes. "Okay. Give me 20 minutes." She drove across town one more time, and when she knocked on the apartment door, Mason answered immediately. He pulled her inside and wrapped his arms around her, and Vanessa finally let herself break down. She cried into his chest while he held her, stroking her hair and murmuring things that might have been words or might just have been sounds of comfort. When she finally pulled herself together, she was embarrassed. "Sorry, I don't usually fall apart like that." "You're allowed to fall apart. You just lost everything." "Not everything." She looked up at him. "I still have you, right?" Mason kissed her forehead. "Yeah, you still have me." They sat on the couch, careful not to wake Lily, and Vanessa told him everything. The vote, the accusations, David's smug face, the way her assistant had cried. Mason listened without interrupting, his hand warm in hers. "What are you going to do now?" he asked when she finished. "I have no idea. I've been CEO since I was 22. I don't know how to be anything else." "Maybe that's not such a bad thing. Maybe this is a chance to figure out who you are when you're not defined by work." "That's terrifying." "Yeah," Mason agreed, "but you're good at terrifying things." Vanessa laughed despite herself. "I don't feel very good at anything right now." "You're good at chess." "Well, not good enough to beat me, but good." "That's not exactly a marketable skill." "You're good with Lily. She adores you." "That's different." "Is it? You're patient with her. You listen when she talks. You don't treat her like she's fragile, even though she is. That takes skill." Vanessa hadn't thought about it that way. She'd just been trying not to screw up, trying to be present in the way Mason was present. But maybe that counted for something. "I should probably let you rest," she said, even though the last thing she wanted was to go back to her empty penthouse. "Or you could stay." Watch a movie. Fall asleep on my couch like you've done a dozen times. I thought you needed space. I said we needed space 12 hours ago, before you kissed me and lost your job. Things change. He squeezed her hand. Stay, please. So she stayed. They put on a movie neither of them watched, sitting close together on the couch. Lily woke up around 8 and was delighted to find Vanessa there. She demanded they order pizza and play magic chess, and for a few hours, Vanessa forgot about the board vote and the media coverage and everything she'd lost. Around 10, Lily fell asleep again, worn out from the hospital in the day's excitement. Mason carried her to bed while Vanessa cleaned up the pizza boxes. When he came back, he found her standing at the window, looking out at the city lights. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, coming to stand beside her. "Everything, nothing. How much my life has changed in 2 months." She glanced at him. "Is this crazy? Us?" "Probably, but I stopped caring about crazy around the time you showed up to play chess in your $1,000 suit." "It was $1,500, actually." "Even worse." They smiled at each other, and then they were kissing again. This time, there was no hesitation, no pulling back. Mason's hands found their way into her hair, and Vanessa pressed closer, desperate for the connection, for the reminder that she wasn't alone in this. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Mason looked torn. "I want you to stay," he said. "But Lily's in the next room and my mother could walk in any minute, and this feels like it's moving too fast." "It is moving too fast. We should slow down." "We should." Neither of them moved. They stood there, foreheads pressed together, stuck in the space between what they should do and what they wanted to do. Finally, Vanessa forced herself to step back. "I should go home, get some sleep, figure out my next move." "What is your next move?" "I don't know yet, but I'll figure it out. I always do." Mason walked her to the door. Before she left, he caught her hand one more time. "For what it's worth, I think they're idiots for firing you. And I'm sorry my being in your life cost you so much." "You didn't cost me anything. You gave me something I didn't know I was missing." She kissed him one more time, quick and sweet. "I'll call you tomorrow." But when she got home to her penthouse, Vanessa couldn't sleep. She paced the empty rooms, her mind racing through options and strategies. She could fight the board decision, lawyer up, make their lives hell. She could start her own company, compete directly with Whitmore Industries. She could take the generous severance package they'd offered and disappear for a while, travel, figure herself out. Or she could do something else entirely. Around midnight, she pulled out her laptop and started writing. Not a business plan or a legal brief, but a statement. A manifesto. A declaration of everything she'd learned in the past 2 months about what actually mattered. By dawn, she had 10 pages. By noon, she'd edited it down to 3. By evening, she'd sent it to every major business publication and news outlet she had contacts with. The headline wrote itself, "Former Whitmore CEO, Why I Choose Love Over Leadership." The article went live the next morning, and within hours, it had gone viral. Vanessa told the whole story. The chess game, the stupid promise, falling for Mason and Lily, the board's ultimatum, her decision to prioritize people over profit. She was honest about her mistakes, her privilege, her initial blindness to the struggles of working-class families. She called out the board for creating a corporate culture that punished vulnerability and human connection. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Half the internet called her brave and inspiring. The other half said she was a hypocrite trying to spin her firing into a redemption arc. Whitmore Industries stock took a hit. David gave interviews calling her unprofessional. Patricia released a statement expressing disappointment. But buried in the thousands of responses were messages from employees, current and former, sharing their own stories of sacrifice and struggle, of choosing between family and career, of feeling invisible in a system that only valued productivity. Those messages made everything worth it. Mason called her around noon. "Have you seen the news?" he asked. "Which part?" "All of it. You're everywhere. That article. Vanessa, you didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did. Someone needed to say it. Might as well be me." He was quiet for a moment. "You know this means you can never go back, right? You just burned every bridge to your old life." "Good. Those bridges were leading nowhere I wanted to be." "So what now?" Vanessa looked around her penthouse, at the expensive furniture and the view that had once impressed her so much. It felt empty, sterile, like a museum exhibit of a life she used to live. Now, she said, I figure out what comes next, and I was hoping you might help me with that. How? Have dinner with me. A real date. No hiding, no secrecy. I want to take you somewhere nice and hold your hand in public and stop pretending this is anything other than what it is. Which is? Me falling completely in love with you. The words were out before she could stop them. For a moment, there was only silence on the other end of the line. Then Mason laughed, warm and genuine. You really don't do anything halfway, do you? Is that a yes or a no? It's a yes, but fair warning, I'm falling completely in love with you too, and I have no idea how to make this work. Neither do I. We'll figure it out together. What about Lily? We'll figure that out too. If she'll have me. Are you kidding? She's already planning the wedding. She's got a notebook full of terrible ideas involving sparkles and a chocolate fountain. Vanessa laughed until tears streamed down her face, and for the first time since the board meeting, she felt something like hope. She'd lost her job, her title, her carefully constructed identity, but she'd gained something infinitely more valuable. She'd gained a future she actually wanted to live. Their first real date happened 3 days later at a small Italian restaurant Mason picked out. The kind of place Vanessa would have never noticed before because it didn't have a Michelin star or a 6-month waiting list. The hostess seated them at a corner table with a checkered tablecloth and candles stuck in old wine bottles, and Vanessa felt more nervous than she had before any board presentation. You look terrified, Mason said, reaching across the table to take her hand. I haven't been on a real date in years. I don't know the rules anymore. There are no rules. We just eat food and talk. You've done that dozens of times at my apartment. That's different. There weren't expectations. And there are now? Vanessa looked at their joined hands, at the way his thumb traced absent patterns on her skin. I just don't want to mess this up. You won't. And if you do, I'll tell you, and we'll fix it. That's how this works. The waiter came by and they ordered wine and pasta, and slowly the tension in Vanessa's shoulders eased. Mason told her about Lily's day at school, how she'd informed her teacher that her almost stepmom was famous, and the teacher had to gently explain that being on the internet didn't necessarily equal fame. Vanessa laughed so hard she snorted, which made Mason laugh, and suddenly everything felt easy again. I have a confession, Mason said halfway through dinner. I looked you up after that first night, read articles about you, watched interviews. I wanted to understand who you really were. And what did you find? A lot of intimidating credentials and some very boring corporate speak. But there was one interview from about 5 years ago where they asked what you did for fun, and you just stared at the camera like they'd asked you to explain quantum physics. He smiled. That's when I realized you weren't scary. You were just lonely. Vanessa felt the observation settle into her chest, uncomfortable and true. I was. I am. Or I was, before a janitor beat you at chess? Before I realized winning wasn't the same as living. They finished dinner and walked through the neighborhood, and Mason pointed out places that mattered to him. The corner store where he bought Lily's medicine, the park where she'd taken her first steps, the library where they spent Saturday mornings because it was free and warm and full of books. Each location was a piece of his life, and he was sharing them with her like gifts. Can I ask you something? Vanessa said as they walked. When Sarah died, how did you keep going? Mason was quiet for a long time. I didn't have a choice. Lily needed me. Some days that was the only thing that got me out of bed, knowing that if I didn't show up, she'd be alone. He shoved his hands in his pockets. The first year was hell. I was angry at everything. At Sarah for leaving, at myself for not being enough, at the universe for being so random and cruel. I blamed myself for her death, even though logically I knew it wasn't my fault. What happened to her? Car accident. Drunk driver ran a red light. She died instantly. His voice was flat, emotionless, the way people sound when they've told a story too many times. Lily was only 6 months old. She doesn't remember her mother at all, which kills me. Sometimes I try to tell her stories about Sarah, but they feel incomplete, like I'm describing a photograph instead of a person. Vanessa squeezed his hand. I'm sorry. The worst part was realizing I had to be both parents now. I had to be the fun dad and the strict dad, and the comforting parent, and the one who enforces bedtime. I had to figure out how to braid hair and talk about feelings and answer questions about why some kids have moms and Lily doesn't. He glanced at her. Do you know how many times I've failed at that? How many times I've lost my patience or said the wrong thing or just felt completely inadequate? You're an amazing father. I'm a father who's doing his best. That's not the same thing. Mason stopped walking and turned to face her. And that's what scares me about this. About us. Because what if my best isn't good enough for you? What if you realize that dating a single dad means dealing with tantrums and homework battles and canceled plans because Lily's sick again? Then I deal with it. Mason, I'm not here because I think your life is easy or perfect. I'm here because when I'm with you, I feel like myself. The real version, not the CEO version or the daughter trying to live up to her father's expectations. Just me. He studied her face like he was trying to decide if she meant it. Then he kissed her, right there on the sidewalk with cars passing and people walking by. And Vanessa stopped caring about anything except this moment. When they finally made it back to his apartment, Lily was already asleep and Grace was watching a game show on low volume. She took one look at them and smiled. Good date? The best, Mason said, and the way he said it made Vanessa's heart do something complicated and wonderful. Grace gathered her things to leave, but not before pulling Vanessa aside in the kitchen. I misjudged you, she said quietly. I thought you were playing at this, treating my son and granddaughter like a fun experiment. But you love them, don't you? Vanessa didn't hesitate. Yes. Good. Because they love you too, and if you hurt them, I'll make your life very difficult. That's fair. Grace's expression softened. But I don't think you will. I think you're the real deal. She patted Vanessa's arm. Welcome to the family. It's small and messy and sometimes overwhelming, but it's yours now if you want it. After Grace left, Vanessa and Mason sat on the couch in the quiet apartment. Mason pulled her against his side and she tucked herself into the space between his shoulder and his chest, feeling safe in a way she never had before. What happens now? Mason asked. With your career, I mean. You can't just not work. I've been thinking about that. I got a call yesterday from a venture capital firm. They want me to advise startups, help them scale. It would be part-time, flexible hours, mostly remote work. Would you like that? I don't know, maybe. It's different from running a company. Less control, more collaboration. She traced patterns on his chest. But maybe different is good. And maybe you don't have to figure it all out right now. Maybe you can just breathe for a while. The idea of breathing, of not having a 5-year plan or a quarterly strategy, felt foreign and terrifying and strangely appealing. Vanessa had spent her entire adult life moving from one goal to the next, never stopping to ask if she was going in the right direction. Now she had space to ask that question, and the answer was becoming clearer every day. Over the next 2 weeks, Vanessa started building a new routine. She woke up later, went to bed earlier. She took meetings in coffee shops instead of conference rooms. She spent afternoons helping Lily with homework and evenings cooking dinner with Mason. It was domestic and mundane and nothing like her old life, and she loved every second of it. But not everything was simple. The media attention hadn't died down. If anything, her viral article had made things worse. Photographers still showed up occasionally, trying to get photos of her and Mason together. Some mornings, Vanessa woke up to find herself trending on social media for some new speculation or rumor. It was exhausting and invasive, and she hated it. Then the threats started. The first one came via email, a rambling message calling her a hypocrite and a traitor to her class. Vanessa deleted it without a second thought. The second one was more specific, mentioning Mason by name and suggesting he was using her for money. The third one mentioned Lily. That's when Vanessa called her security team. I need protection, she told them. Not for me. For Mason and his daughter. Within 24 hours, they'd installed a security system in Mason's apartment and assigned a discreet detail to watch the building. Mason hated it, argued that it was too much, that they didn't need it. But Vanessa was firm. You don't get to decide this. Those messages threaten Lily. I'm not taking chances with her safety. I've kept her safe for 7 years without security guards. You didn't have people sending you death threats 7 years ago. Please, Mason, let me do this. He finally agreed, but Vanessa could see it bothered him. The power imbalance between them was becoming harder to ignore. She could afford security and private doctors and anything else they needed, while Mason struggled to cover basic expenses. Every time she tried to help, he pulled away a little more. The tension came to a head 3 weeks after their first date. Lily had a routine pulmonologist appointment, and Vanessa offered to come along for support. At the doctor's office, they learned that Lily's condition was worsening. The current treatment plan wasn't working as well as hoped. The doctor recommended a new medication that was significantly more expensive and not fully covered by Mason's insurance. In the parking lot afterward, Mason sat in the driver's seat with his hands gripping the steering wheel so tight his knuckles were white. "I can't afford it," he said quietly. "Even with insurance, the copay is more than I make in a month." Vanessa didn't hesitate. "I'll cover it." "No." "Mason, this is Lily's health. Let me help." "I said no." His voice was sharp, angry. "I'm her father. I take care of her." "I know you do, but you don't have to do it alone anymore." "Yes, I do, because the second I start depending on you for things like this, what happens if you leave? What happens if this doesn't work out and suddenly I can't afford her medication because I got used to you paying for everything?" Vanessa felt like she'd been slapped. "You think I'm going to leave?" "I think you're still figuring out if you want this life. And I can't blame you for that, but I also can't let my daughter's health depend on whether you decide to stick around." They drove back to the apartment in tense silence. Lily, sensing the mood, was quiet in the back seat. Inside, Mason asked his mother to take Lily to the park, and the moment they were alone, the argument erupted properly. "I'm trying to help," Vanessa said, her voice rising. "Why won't you let me?" "Because I don't want your money. I want a partner, not a benefactor." "Those things aren't mutually exclusive. I have resources and you need them. What's wrong with using them?" "Because it's not equal. You pay for everything and I contribute what? My sparkling personality?" Mason ran his hands through his hair. "I already feel like I'm drowning here, Vanessa. You lost your job because of me. You're dealing with threats because of me. And now I can't even afford my daughter's medication without your help. How is that a relationship?" "It's a relationship because we love each other and we're trying to make it work despite complicated circumstances. That's literally what relationships are. In your world, maybe. In mine, men provide for their families. They don't rely on their girlfriend to bail them out every time there's a crisis." Vanessa stared at him. "That's the most sexist thing I've ever heard you say." "It's not sexist, it's—" He stopped, frustrated. "You don't understand. You've never had to worry about money. You've never had to choose between paying rent and buying medicine. You've never felt like a failure because you can't give your kid what they need." "You're right. I don't understand that. But I understand wanting to protect the people you love. And right now, you're letting pride get in the way of Lily's health." "This isn't about pride. It's absolutely about pride. You'd rather struggle and stress yourself into an early grave than accept help from someone who loves you. That's not noble, Mason. That's stupid." The word hung in the air between them, sharp and cutting. Mason's expression shuddered. "Get out," he said quietly. "What?" "Get out of my apartment. I need space to think." "Mason, I didn't mean—" "Yes, you did. And maybe you're right. Maybe I am stupid for thinking this could work." He moved to the door and opened it. "Just go." Vanessa grabbed her purse, tears already forming. "We need to talk about this." "Not now, please just go." She left, and as she drove back to her penthouse, the tears came in full force. She'd been so stupid, pushing him when he clearly needed time, calling him names when he was already feeling inadequate. This was exactly what Grace had warned her about. She'd disrupted their peace, and now everything was falling apart. For 2 days, Mason didn't return her calls or texts. Vanessa threw herself into work, taking meetings with the venture capital firm and pretending her heart wasn't breaking. At night, she lay awake replaying the argument, trying to figure out where she'd gone wrong. On the 3rd day, Grace called. "I need you to come to County General," she said, her voice tight with fear. "It's Lily. She can't breathe." Vanessa was out the door before Grace finished the sentence. She drove to the hospital, breaking every traffic law, her heart pounding so hard she could barely think. In the emergency room, she found Mason standing outside a treatment room, his face pale and his hands shaking. "What happened?" Vanessa demanded. "She was at school, started coughing, and couldn't stop. By the time I got there, she was turning blue." His voice broke. They're trying to stabilize her now, but it's bad, Vanessa. Worse than the last time. Vanessa pulled him into her arms and he collapsed against her, all the pride and anger from their fight evaporating in the face of real terror. They stood like that for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes, holding each other while doctors and nurses rushed in and out of Lily's room. Finally, a doctor emerged. She was young, Indian, with kind eyes that had seen too much tragedy. "Mr. Reed, your daughter is stable for now. We've got her on oxygen and steroids and she's responding well. But I need to be honest with you, her condition is deteriorating. The current treatment plan isn't working. We need to try something more aggressive." "What kind of something?" Mason asked. "There's a newer medication, a biologic that's shown remarkable results in severe cases. It's expensive and not all insurance plans cover it, but given Lily's history and the severity of her attacks, I think it's our best option." Mason looked at Vanessa, and she saw everything in that look: fear and love and desperate hope, and the awful knowledge that he couldn't afford to save his own daughter. "How much?" he asked the doctor. "With insurance, probably around $2,000 a month. Without it, closer to $8,000. Mason's face went gray. "I can't. I don't have—" "We'll figure it out," Vanessa said firmly. She turned to the doctor. "What does she need to start? What's the timeline?" "We'd want to begin treatment as soon as possible. Today, if we can get insurance approval." "Then get approval, whatever it takes. Send all the paperwork to me." Vanessa rattled off her email address. "I'll handle the financial side." The doctor nodded and left. Mason sank into a waiting room chair like his legs wouldn't hold him anymore. "I can't let you pay for this," he said, but there was no fight in his voice anymore. Only exhaustion and defeat. Vanessa knelt in front of him, taking his hands in hers. "Yes, you can. Because if you don't, Lily gets sicker, and I know you love your daughter more than your pride." "I hate this. I hate feeling helpless." "I know, but you're not helpless. You're letting someone who loves you help carry the weight. That's not weakness, Mason. That's trust." He looked at her with red-rimmed eyes. "I'm sorry about the fight. I was scared and I took it out on you." "I'm sorry too. I pushed when I should have listened." She squeezed his hands. "But we're going to get through this, together. No more fighting about money or pride or who provides what. We're a team now, okay? Teams help each other." "Okay," he whispered. "Okay." They let him in to see Lily a few minutes later. She was awake but groggy, an oxygen mask covering her small face. When she saw Vanessa, she tried to smile. "You came," she said, her voice muffled by the mask. "Of course I came. Where else would I be? Dad said you guys had a fight. I thought you might not want to see us anymore." Vanessa felt her heart crack open. She moved to Lily's bedside and brushed hair back from her forehead. "Sweetheart, your dad and I had a disagreement. That's what adults do sometimes. But that doesn't mean I'm going anywhere. I love you both too much to leave over one fight." "Even if we have more fights?" "Even then, love doesn't disappear just because things get hard." "Promise?" Vanessa looked at Mason, who was watching them with an expression that was equal parts love and terror and something that looked like surrender. She thought about all the promises she'd made in her business career, the contracts and negotiations and deals that had meant everything at the time and nothing now. This promise was different. This one mattered. "I promise," she said, "I'm not going anywhere." Lily's eyes drifted closed, the medication pulling her under. Mason sat on the other side of the bed and took his daughter's hand, and Vanessa took his free hand, and they sat like that for hours, a makeshift family held together by hope and fear, and a love none of them had been looking for. The new medication started the next day after insurance approval came through. Vanessa had made some calls, pulled some strings, reminded a few people that she still had influence even without her CEO title. By evening, Lily had her first dose, and the doctors were cautiously optimistic. They kept her for 3 days of observation. Vanessa never left the hospital. She slept in uncomfortable chairs, ate terrible cafeteria food, and learned more about pediatric pulmonology than she'd ever wanted to know. Mason's mother brought them clean clothes and updates from the outside world, but Vanessa barely processed any of it. Her entire universe had narrowed to this hospital room and this little girl and this man she loved so desperately it scared her. On the 3rd day, Lily's breathing had improved so much the doctors cleared her to go home. The relief was overwhelming. Mason actually cried, and Vanessa held him while he shook with the force of emotions he'd been holding back for days. In the car on the way home, Lily chattered about how she was going to write a book about her hospital adventures and sell it for $1 million. That's ambitious, Mason said, smiling for the first time in days. Vanessa will help me. She knows about business stuff. Actually, Vanessa said carefully, I know about numbers and strategy, but you know what I don't know? How to tell a good story. Maybe you should write it yourself and I'll just be your first reader. But then who's going to make it into a real book? We'll figure that out when you've written it. First step is first, right? Lily considered this. Okay, but you have to help me spell hard words. Deal. Back at the apartment, Grace had prepared dinner and cleaned up the accumulated chaos of the past few days. She hugged all of them, her eyes wet with tears, and declared that Lily needed to rest immediately, even though the doctors had said she was fine. After Lily was settled in her room with a movie and strict orders not to move, the adults gathered in the kitchen. Grace made tea nobody wanted, and they sat in silence, processing everything that had happened. I've been thinking, Mason said eventually, about what you said, about teams. Yeah? You were right. I can't do this alone. I thought I could, thought I had to, but he looked at Vanessa. But I don't want to anymore. I don't want to be the hero who does everything himself. I just want Lily to be healthy and happy, and if that means accepting help, then I need to get over myself. It's not about getting over yourself, Vanessa said gently. It's about recognizing that accepting help doesn't make you less of a father. It makes you a father who's smart enough to use all available resources. Grace cleared her throat. Can I say something? They both nodded. I've watched Mason raise Lily alone for 7 years. I've seen him sacrifice everything for her, his career, his social life, any chance at happiness, and I've been proud of him for it. But I've also been worried. She looked at her son. You've been surviving, baby, not living, just getting through each day and hoping the next one doesn't break you. Mason started to protest, but Grace held up a hand. Let me finish. Then Vanessa showed up, and at first I thought she was just another complication you didn't need, but I was wrong. She's the best thing that's happened to you since Lily was born. She makes you smile. She makes you think about a future beyond the next medical bill. And most importantly, she loves Lily like her own. Vanessa felt tears prick her eyes. Grace reached across the table and took her hand. You're family now, Grace said firmly. Not because of some viral video or because you have money to throw at problems, but because you showed up. You stayed when things got hard. You sat in that hospital for 3 days and didn't complain once. That's what family does. I don't know how to be family, Vanessa admitted. I never learned. My father taught me how to win and how to close deals, but he never taught me how to just be there for people. You're learning now, Mason said, and you're doing better than you think. They talked until late, making plans and setting boundaries. Vanessa would help with medical expenses, but Mason would still work and contribute what he could. They'd split other costs fairly based on income. They'd communicate before making big decisions. They'd be honest when things felt unbalanced. It wasn't perfect and it wasn't romantic, but it was real. And real was what they needed. That night, after Grace went home and Lily was asleep, Vanessa and Mason sat on his couch in the dark. She was curled against him, his arm around her shoulders, and everything felt settled in a way it hadn't before the hospital. I love you, Mason said into the quiet. I should have said it before, but I was scared. Scared of what? That you'd realize you could do better, that this, me and Lily, and our complicated, messy life wasn't what you signed up for when you made that stupid bet. Vanessa tilted her head up to look at him. I didn't sign up for anything. I fell into it. And you know what I discovered? This messy, complicated life is exactly what I've been missing. I spent 35 years climbing a ladder that led nowhere. You showed me a different path. A path that involves hospital visits and financial stress and security guards outside your apartment. A path that involves love and connection and actually mattering to people beyond what I can do for them. She kissed him softly. I love you too. And I love Lily, and I'm exactly where I want to be. They kissed properly then, deep and slow. And for the first time since their fight, Vanessa felt like they'd found their balance. It was precarious and would require constant adjustment, but they were both willing to try. That had to count for something. The months that followed weren't easy, but they were honest. Lily's new medication worked better than anyone had hoped. Her attacks became less frequent, less severe. Some mornings she woke up, breathing easily, and ran around the apartment with energy that made Grace laugh and Mason shake his head in wonder. Other days were harder, but even the hard days felt manageable now that they weren't facing them alone. Vanessa moved out of her penthouse in February. The place had always felt like a hotel anyway, all glass and steel and expensive emptiness. She found a house instead, a modest three-bedroom place in Mason's neighborhood with a backyard and creaky floors and windows that didn't quite close properly. It needed work, but that felt right somehow. She was learning that perfection was overrated. Mason and Lily didn't officially move in, but they spent most nights there anyway. Lily claimed the smallest bedroom as her own, decorating it with drawings and the paper crown she'd made Vanessa months ago. Mason kept insisting he should still pay rent on his old apartment, just in case, and Vanessa let him keep it even though they both knew he was never going back. Some battles weren't worth fighting. The venture capital work turned out to be more interesting than Vanessa expected. She met with founders who reminded her of herself at 22, full of ambition and terror and desperate hope. But instead of crushing them with impossible demands the way her father had crushed her, she found herself teaching them about balance, about building companies that didn't require sacrificing everything else, about success that didn't leave you isolated and miserable at the top. "You're getting soft," one of her old colleagues told her at a conference. He meant it as an insult, but Vanessa just smiled. "Maybe," she said, "or maybe I finally figured out what actually matters." The media attention faded eventually, the way it always does when the next scandal comes along. Occasionally, someone would recognize her at the grocery store or the park, usually with a comment about that chess video. Some people thought the whole thing was romantic. Others thought she'd made a mistake giving up her career. Vanessa stopped caring what strangers thought somewhere around the time Lily taught her how to make friendship bracelets. In April, Mason quit his night janitor job. Vanessa had been waiting for him to bring it up, watching him get more exhausted as the months passed. Finally, she'd sat him down and asked him point blank what he wanted. "I want to be there when Lily goes to sleep at night," he'd admitted. "I want to eat dinner with her instead of leaving for work right after. I want to see her in the mornings instead of stumbling and exhausted right when she's leaving for school." "So quit." "And do what?" "I need to work." "Then work during the day. There are thousands of jobs that don't require you to be nocturnal." He'd looked at her like she was suggesting he sprout wings and fly. "I don't have a college degree. I dropped out to play chess, remember? Day jobs that pay anything require qualifications I don't have. You have other qualifications. You're one of the best chess players in the country. You could teach." "Nobody wants chess lessons from a guy who quit the circuit 7 years ago." "I bet you're wrong about that." She'd spent the next week making calls and sending emails, reaching out to private schools and chess clubs and community centers. Within 2 weeks, Mason had 3 job offers teaching chess to kids. He picked the one at a community center in their neighborhood, the one that paid the least but felt the most right. Watching him teach was like watching someone come alive after years of sleepwalking. He was patient with the kids, encouraging, able to break down complex strategies into simple concepts. The kids loved him. Their parents loved him, and he came home every evening energized instead of depleted, eager to tell Lily about his day instead of collapsing into bed. "You were right," he told Vanessa one night as they did dishes together, a mundane domestic ritual that somehow felt profound. "About the teaching. I'm occasionally right about things." "Occasionally," he agreed, smiling. He dried a plate and put it away. "I forgot how much I love chess. Not the competitive part, not the rankings and the pressure. Just the game itself, the beauty of it. Will you teach me properly? Not just how to not lose, but how to actually play well? You want to learn? I want you to stop going easy on me when we play. Lily's already better than I am. It's embarrassing." So Mason started teaching her, really teaching her the way he taught his students. He showed her openings she'd never learned, tactics her father had never mentioned, strategies that required thinking 5 and 6 moves ahead instead of just 3. It was humbling and frustrating, and occasionally Vanessa wanted to throw the board across the room, but she kept at it. By June, she'd won her first game against him. It took her 47 moves and she'd nearly lost 3 times, but she'd found a weakness in his position and exploited it without mercy. Mason stared at the board in genuine surprise. "I wasn't going easy on you." "I know." "You actually beat me." Don't sound so shocked. I'm a quick learner when I'm motivated. He'd kissed her then, hard and celebratory, and Lily had made exaggerated gagging noises from across the room where she was doing homework. It was perfect and ridiculous and exactly the kind of moment Vanessa had been missing her entire life. In July, Whitmore Industries called. Not the board, not David or Patricia, but Richard. Her former CFO, who'd sat silent during her removal, sounded nervous on the phone. "I need to talk to you," he said. "In person. It's important." They met at a coffee shop far from the financial district. Richard looked older than Vanessa remembered, more tired. He ordered a coffee he didn't drink and spent 5 minutes making small talk before getting to the point. "The company's in trouble," he finally said. "David's strategy isn't working. We've lost 3 major clients. Stock price is down 18%. Employee morale is terrible." "And you're telling me this why?" "Because the board wants you back." Vanessa had imagined this moment dozens of times. The vindication, the satisfaction of being proven right, the sweet taste of having them beg her to return. In her fantasies, she'd made them grovel. She'd negotiated brutal terms. She'd made sure they understood exactly what they'd lost when they fired her. But sitting across from Richard, looking at his tired face and his untouched coffee, she felt nothing except mild curiosity. "What happened to David?" "He resigned last week, took a position at a competitor. Patricia's stepping down too. The board's in chaos." "So you need someone to clean up the mess." "We need you. The board is prepared to offer you a significant raise, better equity terms, essentially carte blanche to rebuild however you see fit." Vanessa sipped her own coffee, thinking, 6 months ago, this would have been everything she wanted. The chance to reclaim her position, to prove she'd been right all along, to show them they'd made a mistake. "No," she said. Richard blinked. "What?" "I said no. I'm not interested." "Vanessa, this is Whitmore Industries. Your father's company. Your legacy." "My father's company," she repeated. "Not mine. He built it, and I saved it, and I gave it everything I had for 13 years. That's enough." "But I'm happy, Richard. For the first time in my adult life, I wake up, and I'm actually happy. I have work I enjoy, people I love, a life that doesn't require sacrificing my humanity. Why would I give that up? For the challenge, the prestige, the chance to be CEO again? I was CEO. It was lonely and exhausting and left me playing chess by myself in an empty office at midnight. That's not success. That's just expensive loneliness." Richard was quiet for a long moment. "What should I tell the board?" "Tell them to promote from within. Find someone who actually cares about the company beyond what it can do for their career, and tell them to treat their employees better. That employee benefits program I proposed? Implement it, all of it. Maybe then people will actually want to work there." They talked for a few more minutes, but Richard's heart wasn't in it. He'd come expecting to negotiate, to deal with demands and conditions. Vanessa's complete lack of interest had thrown him entirely. When she got home, Mason and Lily were in the backyard. He was teaching her how to plant tomatoes, both of them covered in dirt and laughing about something. Vanessa stood at the window watching them, these two people who'd accidentally become her entire world, and felt completely certain she'd made the right choice. "Whitmore Industries called," she told Mason that night after Lily was asleep. "They want me back as CEO." She saw his face do something complicated. "And?" "And I told them no." "Just like that?" "Just like that." She moved into his arms, resting her head on his chest. "I thought I'd feel conflicted or tempted, but I didn't. That part of my life is over." "Do you regret it? Giving it all up?" "I didn't give up anything. I traded something that was killing me for something that makes me want to wake up every morning. That's not sacrifice, that's survival." Mason kissed the top of her head. "You're sure?" "I'm sure." But she could tell he didn't entirely believe her, could sense him waiting for her to change her mind or regret her choice, or wake up one day resenting him for the life she'd left behind. That doubt lived between them, quiet but persistent, a question neither of them wanted to ask out loud. The answer came in August, on a Saturday morning that started like any other. Vanessa woke to find Mason's side of the bed empty and followed the sound of voices to the kitchen. Lily was sitting at the table with a workbook, Mason beside her helping with math homework. "If you have 12 apples and you give away 5, how many do you have left?" Mason asked. 7. "But why would you give away 5 apples? That's weird." "Maybe you're being generous. Or maybe you don't like apples." Vanessa leaned against the doorframe, watching them. This was her life now. Saturday morning, math homework and debates about hypothetical fruit. No board meetings, no urgent calls, no pressure to be anyone except herself. "Morning," Mason said, noticing her. "Coffee's fresh." "Thanks." She poured herself a cup and sat down across from them. "How's the homework going?" "Terrible," Lily announced cheerfully. "Math is boring?" "Math is useful," Mason corrected. "You need it for lots of things." "Name one thing." "Cooking. You need math to adjust recipes." "Vanessa doesn't cook." "I'm learning," Vanessa protested. "I made that pasta last week." "You burned the pasta last week," Lily said. "Even the noodles. I didn't know you could burn noodles." Mason tried not to laugh. "It was an impressive feat." "I was distracted." "By what?" "By you," Vanessa thought. "By watching you teach Lily fractions and realizing I've learned more about contentment in 8 months than in 35 years of achievement." But that felt too heavy for a Saturday morning, so she just smiled. "I don't remember. What do you guys want to do today?" They decided on the science museum Lily had been begging to visit for months. It was crowded with families, loud and chaotic in the way museums always are on weekends. Lily dragged them from exhibit to exhibit, full of questions and theories and absolute certainty that she would be a scientist when she grew up. "Last week you wanted to be a writer," Mason reminded her. "I can be both. Vanessa had like 3 jobs." "I had 1 job for 13 years, Vanessa corrected. "See? 3 words for 1 job. That's like having 3 jobs." Mason met Vanessa's eyes over Lily's head and they both smiled. This was their normal now. Lily's logic, Mason's patience, Vanessa's continuing education in how families actually worked. It was messier than any business plan she'd ever created and infinitely more valuable. In the planetarium, sitting in the dark watching stars projected onto the dome ceiling, Lily reached over and took Vanessa's hand. It was such a casual gesture, so natural and unconscious, that Vanessa almost missed how significant it was. This child trusted her completely, loved her without reservation, saw her as family. Vanessa squeezed Lily's hand gently and felt something shift into place inside her chest. This was what she'd been looking for her entire life without knowing it. Not power or prestige or her father's approval. Just this. Connection. Belonging. Being needed for who she was rather than what she could do. That night, after they'd gotten home and eaten dinner and put Lily to bed, Vanessa and Mason sat in the backyard. Summer was fading into fall, the air cooling, leaves just starting to turn. Mason opened a bottle of wine and they sat in comfortable silence, watching stars appear one by one. "Can I ask you something?" Mason said eventually. "Always." "Do you ever miss it? The power, the deals, the feeling of running something that big?" Vanessa thought about it honestly. "Sometimes I miss the clarity of it. Business problems have solutions. You run the numbers, make the decision, move forward. Personal stuff is messier. There's no formula for being a good partner or figuring out how to help raise someone else's kid. You're doing fine at both those things." "I don't always feel like I am. Last week I forgot it was Lily's turn to bring snacks to school. The week before that I scheduled a call during her doctor's appointment and you had to take her alone. I'm still figuring out how to balance everything. Nobody has it figured out. We're all just guessing and hoping we don't screw up our kids too badly." "That's not very reassuring." "It's honest." Mason refilled both their glasses. "But to answer the question you didn't ask, no, I don't think you regret leaving. I think you're relieved you finally have permission to want something different." Vanessa looked at him. "Permission from who?" "Yourself, your father. Whatever voice in your head that kept saying you had to be CEO or you were nothing. You've been fighting that voice for months, and I think you're finally winning." He was right. The voice that had driven her for decades, her father's voice mixed with her own fears and ambitions, had gotten quieter. Some days she barely heard it at all. Other days it still whispered that she was wasting her potential, that she'd given up too easily, that she should want more. But those days were becoming rarer. "I want to marry you," Mason said into the quiet. Vanessa's heart stopped. "What?" "I know it's fast and complicated and we probably should wait longer, but I don't want to. I want you to be Lily's stepmom officially. I want us to be a real family instead of just playing house." He turned to face her. "I want to wake up every morning for the rest of my life knowing you chose us." I chose you months ago. I know. But I want everyone else to know it too. I want my mother to stop calling you my girlfriend like you're temporary. I want Lily to be able to tell people at school that you're her mom. I want... Vanessa kissed him to stop the rambling. When she pulled back, she was smiling so hard her face hurt. Yes. Yes? Yes, I'll marry you. On one condition. Mason looked nervous. What condition? We get married small. Just us, Lily, Grace, maybe a few close friends. No media, no spectacle, no 1,000-person guest list. I want it to be real, not a performance. I can't afford a big wedding anyway. I wasn't offering to pay for one. I'm saying I don't want one. She took his hands. I spent my whole life performing for audiences. I'm done with that. I just want to marry you. They didn't tell Lily right away. They wanted to figure out the details first, to make sure they were both certain. But 3 days later at dinner, Lily looked up from her spaghetti and announced, "You guys are acting weird." Weird how? Mason asked. Like you have a secret. Are you having another fight? No fights, Vanessa promised. Actually, we have something to tell you. Lily's eyes went wide. Are you getting married? Vanessa and Mason looked at each other, surprised. How did you know? Because Dad keeps smiling at nothing, and you've been looking at wedding dresses on your laptop. I saw when I borrowed it for homework. Lily bounced in her seat. I knew it. I knew you were going to get married. Can I be the flower girl? Can we have a chocolate fountain? Can I wear a fancy dress? Yes, no, and yes, Mason said. But it's going to be a small wedding. Just family. That's boring. That's intimate, Vanessa corrected. And anyway, the wedding doesn't matter as much as what comes after. What comes after? After, we all live together officially. I adopt you if that's okay with you. We become a family for real instead of just practicing. Lily went very quiet. When she looked up, there were tears in her eyes. You want to adopt me? Only if you want me to. It's your choice. But you're rich and important, and you could have kids of your own. Why would you want me? The question broke Vanessa's heart. She moved around the table and knelt beside Lily's chair. Because you're funny and smart and brave. Because you taught me how to be better at being human. Because I love you exactly as you are, not as some hypothetical perfect child I might have someday. You're not second choice, sweetheart. You're the choice. Lily threw her arms around Vanessa's neck and sobbed. Happy tears, Vanessa realized, holding her tight. These were happy tears. I want you to be my mom, Lily whispered. I want it so much. Then I will be. Not to replace your birth mom, she'll always be important, but I'll be your mom too. You can have two. There's no limit on love. They sat like that for a long time, Lily crying into Vanessa's shoulder while Mason watched with his own tears streaming down his face. Eventually, Grace showed up with dessert and found all three of them crying at the kitchen table. What happened? She demanded. Is someone hurt? We're getting married, Mason said through tears, and Vanessa's adopting Lily. Grace set down the pie and pulled all of them into a hug. About damn time. They got married 6 weeks later in the backyard of their house. Grace officiated after getting ordained online for $20. Lily wore a pink dress and carried flowers from the garden. Mason wore a suit Vanessa bought him after he tried to insist his work clothes were fine. Vanessa wore a simple white dress that cost less than her old business suits and felt more right than any designer gown could have. The ceremony lasted 10 minutes. Mason's vows made everyone cry. Vanessa's vows were shorter, but no less honest. Lily stood between them, holding both their hands, and when the moment came to exchange rings, she got to put Vanessa's ring on her finger. I now pronounce you married, Grace said, wiping her eyes. Kiss already, so we can eat cake. The reception was 15 people in their backyard, eating barbecue and drinking beer and celebrating something that felt both monumental and completely natural. No photographers, no media, no one who cared about Vanessa's former career or Mason's former fame. Just people who loved them celebrating two people who'd found each other in the strangest way possible. Richard sent a gift, a chess set carved from expensive wood with a note that said he was happy for her. Patricia sent flowers. David sent nothing, which felt appropriate. Around sunset, Mason found Vanessa standing alone by the tomato plants they'd planted together months ago. You okay? He asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. I'm perfect. I'm married to you. Any regrets? Only that I didn't lose that first chess game faster. He laughed and kissed her neck. You want to know a secret? Always. I went easy on you that first night. I could have won in 12 moves, but I stretched it out to 20 because I wanted to keep playing. Vanessa turned in his arms. You went easy on me? Just a little. You were terrible. I was not terrible. You absolutely were, but you were fun to play with. And you laughed when you lost instead of getting angry. I liked that about you. So you decided to marry me because I'm a good loser? I decided to marry you because you showed me it's okay to lose sometimes. That not everything has to be a competition. That sometimes the point isn't winning, it's finding someone you want to keep playing with. Inside, Lily was teaching Grace and the other guests her magic chess rules, making up new ones as she went. Her laughter carried through the open windows, bright and unrestrained and healthy. The new medication was working. She hadn't had a serious attack in months. The doctors were cautiously optimistic she might outgrow the severity of her asthma entirely. Do you think she'll remember this? Vanessa asked. When she's older? Some of it. Maybe not all the details, but she'll remember feeling loved and safe and celebrated. Mason pulled her closer. That's what matters. Not the perfect Instagram-worthy moment, but the feeling underneath it. They went back inside to join the party. Lily immediately grabbed both of them, insisting they all play a game where everyone had to make up new chess rules, and the winner was whoever made everyone laugh the hardest. It was chaotic and made no sense, and Vanessa loved every ridiculous second of it. Later that night, after everyone had gone home and Lily was asleep and the house was quiet, Vanessa and Mason sat on their couch with the chessboard between them. It had become their ritual, ending each day with a game. Your move, Mason said. Vanessa studied the board, thinking through possibilities. She was better than she'd been 9 months ago, but still not as good as Mason. She probably never would be, and she was okay with that. She moved her knight, accepting a position that put her at a slight disadvantage, but opened up interesting possibilities later. That's a risky move, Mason observed. I'm feeling risky. They played in comfortable silence, the kind of quiet that comes from knowing someone so well you don't need to fill the space with words. Outside, the city hummed with traffic and sirens and life continuing all around them. But inside this house, in this moment, the world had narrowed to just the two of them, and a checkered board and 32 pieces moving in patterns both ancient and brand new. Mason won eventually, but it took him longer than usual. Vanessa had learned to be patient, to think several moves ahead, to see weaknesses she would have missed before. She was learning that losing gracefully was its own kind of victory. Good game, Mason said, resetting the pieces. Want to go again? Always. And that, Vanessa thought, as Mason set up for another game, was the real lesson chess had been trying to teach her all along. It wasn't about winning or losing. It wasn't about domination or strategy or being the smartest person in the room. It was about finding someone worth playing with, someone who challenged you and taught you and made you want to be better, not because you had to prove something, but because growth was more interesting than stagnation. She'd spent 35 years thinking success meant standing alone at the top. Turned out it actually meant sitting across a chessboard from someone you loved, arguing about whether a move was brilliant or reckless, and knowing that win or lose, you'd play again tomorrow. I love you, she said, moving her pawn. Mason smiled, the same crooked smile that had made her heart do something complicated the first night they'd played. I love you too, and by the way, you just walked into a trap. Of course I did. Want to take it back? No, I want to see where it goes. Because that was the other thing she'd learned. You couldn't control every outcome, couldn't anticipate every move, couldn't protect yourself from loss by refusing to play. Sometimes you just had to trust the game, trust your partner, trust that even when you lost, you'd both be there to set up the pieces and try again. Mason captured her bishop 3 moves later, but Vanessa didn't mind. She was already planning her comeback, thinking about positions and possibilities, feeling that familiar thrill of challenge that had nothing to do with corporate takeovers and everything to do with being fully present in her own life. Upstairs, Lily coughed in her sleep. Both Vanessa and Mason went still, listening. But the cough didn't repeat. Just a normal nighttime sound, not the beginning of an attack. They relaxed simultaneously, the shared fear and shared relief pulling them closer. She's okay, Mason whispered. She's okay, Vanessa agreed. And in that moment, sitting in a house that creaked and needed repairs, With a daughter sleeping upstairs and a husband across the chessboard, and a life that looked nothing like she'd planned, Vanessa Whitmore finally understood what winning actually meant. It meant being here, being present, being willing to lose everything you thought mattered, and discovering what actually did. It meant choosing love over loneliness, connection over control, and messy, imperfect humanity over cold, calculated success. It meant learning that sometimes the best move is the one that doesn't win the game, but keeps you playing together, keeps you connected, keeps you willing to try again no matter how many times you lose. It meant understanding that life, like chess, wasn't about the final position. It was about every move along the way, every choice that led you closer to or further from the people you loved. Mason moved his queen, threatening her king. Vanessa smiled and moved her rook, accepting the inevitable checkmate but setting up an interesting problem for him to solve first. "That's just mean," Mason said, laughing. "I learned from the best. They played until past midnight, until they were both too tired to think straight, and the moves became sloppy, and the game dissolved into laughter. And when they finally went to bed, Vanessa felt completely content. Not because she'd won anything, not because she'd proven anything, but because she'd found something worth losing for. And in the end, maybe that was the only victory that actually mattered.